biggest uncertainty right now, roll out. What work that playing right? That's what for this Slocum, biggest laboratory with us today, 8-hour mission.
These what there's aerosols and clouds is called.
That is puzzle that
That's right if you don't process.
So we've got to get about to shot. Let's weather or a climate shift that to come from it starts out of the plains.
Well, this particular understand emissions for most emissions trees and
Right to our very this in DC, Arkansas, really pay of emissions to say
emissions on both and to both the and so these are things to understand.
how it managed. It will be accurate and predictions.
what we're doing a series of different atmosphere, picking up those, testing them, we're going to see what's out of air.
The data on flight can keep scientists for 40 years from data.
This is its most in its nearly of service. These concepts science in chambers called black EM right. Putting these bags that we trap here up here about
A what
anyway good. Let him two one how gonna get
and they grow as long as we
to the chain. No, where are what kind of that'll all be shifting the climate change.
then the big spark is this, is when we actually get the meat on the grill, and then it will be some time to process it.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies.
In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
Hey, what do you say, everybody? It is Wednesday, August 12. Here we go.
Ready to rock and roll here on the Bill Press Show this Wednesday on Free Speech TV and on our video stream, worldwide video stream, Talker TV. We're coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital, with the news of the day from Washington, from around the country, from around the globe. We want to hear from you. What you think about it all, give us a call at 866-55-PRESS. Join the conversation. Send us your comments on Twitter if that's easier for you, at BP Show, and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. Rainy day up in Martha's Vineyard yesterday. President Obama inside sports yesterday, maybe reading a good book, and who knows, but whatever. No golf yesterday. Meanwhile, the Trump machine continues to roll on. The Donald has put his problems with Megyn Kelly and Fox News behind him. He gave a great big speech out in Michigan yesterday. Thousands of people turning out to hear the same old stuff. And meanwhile, Donald continues to climb in the polls. And Republicans are still trying to figure out what the hell they're going to do about him. Speaking of climbing in the polls, Bernie Sanders today up over Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire, 44-37. Bernie riding, of course, on the wave of the recent endorsement he got over the weekend by the National Nurses Union. Goes off to Iowa this weekend to try to turn some of that crowd surge and enthusiasm into volunteers at the grassroots level to get people out for the caucuses in Iowa, making the Hillary camp very nervous. And in the United States Senate, Democrats getting nervous about Chuck Schumer announcing his opposition to the Iran nuclear deal. In other words, he would rather stand with John Boehner and Mitch McConnell than Barack Obama. He's free to do that, but then can he really turn around and pretend to be the Democratic leader in the Senate? Some Democrats saying no. Lots to talk about. Thanks for being with us. Again, give us a call at 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
We came here to Foster City, where we're going to watch UC Berkeley, a University of California SWAT team, do a hostage rescue scenario.
Should I put the water in there now? Yeah, go ahead.
So this is like some kind of chemical agent?
Yeah. Copy, we're ready. I'm gonna get shot. I already know it, dude. Bean's yelling at me.
Gentlemen, we have a chemical. We need to pull our person out. Get these guys out of here. Pull them out. Pull them out. Pull them out. Put your hands on your face. Put your hands on your face. Keep him covered.
Your head up. He's got a shotgun back there.
That's all right. Keep his hands up where we can.
Hands on your face.
Hands on your face.
On your face.
On your face.
Someone cover me. I got a holster up, dude.
Okay, pull him around the corner. Pick him up. Get him out of the building. Quickly. We've got this. Let's get that guy out of there. You, come towards us. Keep your hands on your face. Turn around. Face away from us. Back towards us. Quickly. Back up towards me. Quickly, quickly, quickly. Pull him out of the room.
We're exfilling, Billy.
Yes, we are exfilling.
It's actually around 92, 94. There was an attack on the chancellor at his residence, which is on campus.
Okay. Uh-huh.
And we realized at the time that we didn't have any resources to deal with that kind of threat when it took place.
Okay.
So, and I think about 15 years before, they had some kind of semblance of a SWAT team.
Uh-huh.
So they regenerated the idea of
I see.
activating a SWAT team.
And then since then, you guys have kind of branched out to doing what kind of stuff?
Well, since then, we train for everything. We train for every eventuality, barricaded subjects. Like I said, most of what we do is high-risk warrants.
Okay. And it's something like it could be like a mugging kind of thing, just like on the street.
Depends.
Or
I mean,
like
a mugging, but if it's armed, particularly.
Right, an armed mugging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then obviously we're looking for training for anything else.
Yeah.
That we might be faced with. And that's what's great about Urban Shield is we couldn't duplicate this on our own.
On your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
Bernie is number 1 in New Hampshire, and Donald Trump is number 1 in Iowa. Is there a message here about maybe establishment politicians these days? What do you say? Hello, everybody. Great to see you today. It's a Wednesday, August 12th. If you're looking for the Bill Press Show, you got it. Here we are. You got me, you got us. Coming to you live from Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. That's where we start out today, but we reach out to you all across this great land of ours. Every city, every village, every town and countryside. Here with you on your local progressive talk radio station. Here with you on Extended Radio Land, if you've got one of those great radio apps, either TuneIn or iHeartRadio. Should have it on your device so you can follow us wherever you are on the radio. And here with you on Free Speech TV as well, worldwide on our video stream, Talker TV. Great to see you. Hope you're ready for a big Wednesday, and whatever's happening, you'll find out about it right here because we'll tell you what's going on. And find out from you. We want to hear from you what your take on everything is, what you think about it, what's bothering you this morning. Give us a call at 866-55-PRESS. Send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. Here with Peter Ogburn and Lisa Murphy.
Here we are.
Hey, happy Wednesday.
Good of you to show up, as well as Jamie Benson. Good for Jamie to be here to take your calls at 866-55-PRESS and Monty Kensler, our videographer for the day. Lights are on, cameras are on. Lights, camera, action.
You got it.
All right, he does the lights and the camera. We provide the action.
Doing our best.
Yes, indeed. And I do want to point out for those of you who are watching and not listening this morning that this is not a paid commercial for Pfizer. Somebody just gave me this shirt. I gave a speech one time at a Pfizer, I don't know, conference or something out in Michigan, as I recall, maybe Ann Arbor.
It's one of the great things about working in radio, TV, right? The swag.
You get to get shirts.
Yeah.
Right. And you send them, I'll wear them.
That's true. That is true.
You get a little restaurant, a little pizza parlor, a bar, or
you got to send the food too.
Sub shop, send a shirt, we'll wear it.
You know, we can be bought and sold. A lot of politicians out there claim that they can't be bought and sold. Not us, baby.
No. I remember when Tucker and I had the spin room, we used to wear stuff people would send us, but there was, Tony something. I think it was around Cleveland.
Uh-huh.
It was a famous joint out there.
Okay.
We'd never been there, but they sent a shirt. Tucker and I used to wear them on the air. Yeah.
Okay, all right. I'm trying to think of it because I think I remember hearing about that. And
I think I still have that shirt.
Oh, man.
Yeah, all right. So, hey. Send it on.
Swag, baby. We love it.
We got it.
We love it.
Yes, indeed. We mentioned yesterday that Stephen Colbert came up with a new phrase. He's not on the air right now, so he can't be talking about Donald Trump. He's doing some dry trumping. And he did announce yesterday his guest he's got lined up for his first show, George Clooney. Big deal. And
it's a big get. Jeb
Bush. I'm not sure I understand the connection there. But he's out. He's trolling. He's trolling for the big guy.
This is not an invitation, Mr. Trump. This is a dare. I dare you to come on the show. Please, Mr. Trump, take care of yourself. Take your vitamins. Just don't do anything dangerous. Just stay healthy and engage the political process until September 9th.
You know, if he keeps doing that, I think he could get Donald Trump.
Trump's got to do it.
But would it be by phone or actually in studio?
It would have to be in the studio. By the way, so we did this interview with Sean Hannity last night. Did he sit down with Hannity?
I do not know.
We got to find out. I think he did. I saw it said he was going to sit down with Hannity. Now, he might have done it in his office.
Right. Yeah, they might have come
not
to him.
in the studio. But let's find out. But for Colbert,
Trump will do Colbert.
Trump will do it, and he ought to do it on the set.
If they have any sense of capturing the moment, and they'll do it.
Yeah,
they'll do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I bet Barack Obama's not far behind.
I keep waiting for that shooter.
He's got to do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So we got lots coming up. David Jackson joins us from the White House a little bit later in this hour. We're going to talk to Kris Van Cleave from CBS News as well. Evan McMorris-Santoro here as a friend of Bill in our final hour, and the good Congresswoman from Illinois, Jen Schakowsky, will be along as well. But first,
this is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. This is Spinal Tap, Waiting for Guffman, Best in Show, A Mighty Wind, all big movies by Christopher Guest, who has revolutionized the mockumentary format, satirizing all manner of scenes out there. So yesterday we got big news. He's going to be making a new movie for Netflix. It's his first feature since 2006. It's called Mascots, and it's going to be focusing on mascots competing for a Gold Fluffy Award, is what they're calling it. It's, again, the first mockumentary that he's done in 9 years. He is sort of a master at this, and so I'm looking forward to seeing what he does.
All right.
Yeah.
He has some great movies.
So those movies are great. I mean, he's been out of the game for a long time. I'm not necessarily sure that it's going to be a huge event, but I'll watch. His old stuff is great. Spinal Tap is amazing.
Oh, yeah. No, it really
and
is.
Best in Show, I just watched it the other day. It's wonderful.
Best in Show is fabulous. I didn't realize he was out of the game that long.
Yeah, he just kind of stopped doing it for a while. Netflix wants him back.
God, I had to watch it again.
I just did, and you know what? It holds up. So all of his movies hold up incredibly well. You should definitely go watch that. Well, the Cleveland Browns might be looking at a new teammate, Ray Rice. Does that sound familiar?
Yeah.
He's going to get his chance back in the NFL. The Ravens released him last season after the video showed up of him knocking out his fiancée, Janae Rice, now his wife. And Ray Rice has been talking to the Cleveland Browns. They may actually be coming on board. No confirmation yet. They're not there yet, but they have discussed bringing Ray Rice onto the team.
That is so sad.
Yeah, it is. Well,
it's a messed up story. I mean, there's
Michael Vick.
There are a lot of layers there about, second chances, but I don't like it. I definitely don't like it. How about this? Last night, wire walker Nick Walenda completed the longest wire walk ever at the Wisconsin State Fair. You remember Nick Walenda famously, we saw him not that long ago walk across the Grand Canyon. He walked what's called the Milwaukee Mile. It wasn't an actual mile, but it was his longest walk to date. Happened at the Wisconsin State Fair. It took him quite a while to walk the 1,560-foot long high wire. And remember, the wire is only about the width of a nickel. That's what he's walking on for that whole time. So, congratulations to that crazy animal again.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's scary, man. I can't even watch that stuff. It makes me too nervous to even watch it. But
it's terrifying.
Yeah, it sure is. Incredible. All right, Peter, thank you. Well, let's start this morning with Bernie. Bernie, we talked a little bit about Bernie yesterday morning, too, but this is a different take on Bernie, which I talked about last night on MSNBC with Chris Hayes. If some of you saw that, I tweeted it out. I mean, so you have no excuse not to watch.
Right.
But First of all, the good news about Bernie today is up in New Hampshire, 7 points over Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire, 44 for Bernie in the latest poll, 37 for former First Lady, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. But the big question about Bernie this morning is, he has been, we talked a little bit about this yesterday too with Clinton Yates when he was in. Bernie has been the target of this new Black Lives Matter movement, which really started nascently, at least, a year ago in Ferguson after the death of Michael Brown, where people started using that phrase, and it has since become a movement. It's a loosely organized movement. But now, by the way, I would say a very, very, very important movement with a very important message, which the title sums it up. Black Lives Matter. They do matter, and we don't pay enough attention to that in our policy and in our politics. There's so many examples, and we've talked about with discrimination and racial bias in police forces, still lingering discrimination in public policy, in our schools, in access to health care, access to jobs across the board. These issues haven't gone away, and some people just prefer to look the other way and not talk about them. So this movement is a way of saying, no, you have to address these issues. Even President Obama has been criticized for not doing enough to talk about race in this country until recently, his second term. Other than the beer summit with Professor Henry Louis Gates in the first term, he didn't talk about race relations at all.
Yeah.
So I just want to point out that the Black Lives Matter movement is very, very important. Where the controversy comes is they've decided, well, we need to make an impact on the 2016 presidential race. Okay, I agree with that. And we're going to start making sure the candidates get the message. Okay, I agree with that. We're going to start with Bernie Sanders. That's where I have a problem. And that's where a lot of people have a problem. And as you know, they first targeted Bernie in Phoenix, and then this weekend they targeted him in Seattle and shut him down. He was invited to speak at a rally organized for the 50th anniversary of Social Security. He never got to say a word. They shut him down. Now, he went there to talk about, among other issues, Social Security. He's talked about Social Security. That's his thing, one of his big issues. He's been on this program talking about I don't know how many times, right? Never got to say a word. Black Lives Matter shut him down. And the question is, why? So this is what we discussed with Chris Hayes last night. And there was a woman there who's one of the founders of the Black Lives Matter movement. And she made the argument. She said, look, we've got a right to protest. We've got a right to shut things down. And other people shut things down. Code Pink shut things down, she said. And nobody complains about them. They're just complaining about us, as if it's almost racist to say that Black Lives Matter shouldn't be shutting down Bernie Sanders. And she also made the point that, so Bernie is fair game, that he may have been a civil rights protester, and he was back in the 60s, 50s, 60s, but, he talks about economic justice, and he doesn't talk enough about social justice. He talks about minimum wage and Social Security and income inequality and jobs, but he doesn't talk enough about police-community relations. And so, therefore, we're going to start with Bernie Sanders. That's my question to you: is Bernie fair game? Are they doing the right thing by targeting Bernie? Or are they making a mistake? 866-55-PRESS. Just a taste of what I said on the show last night is that, number one, okay, I may be as a white American, the last person in the world to be lecturing, and I wouldn't even try, or advising African Americans on how to deal with the problem of race, on how to push for racial equality. But I do know something about protests. I've been around a lot of protests. I've marched in a lot of protests. I have organized a lot of protests. I've marched with some of the best. I've marched with Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and Cesar Chavez and Gene McCarthy on a lot of different issues. And the first lesson I learned about protesting is you protest against the people who don't agree with you. You don't protest and shut down the people who do agree with you. That's a waste of time. That's my main point. And their tactics, I got no problem with shutting anything down. Shut a highway down, shut an airport down, shut a building down, shut a work site down, shut a speech or a rally down. Fine. But first of all, when other people do it, oh yeah, they get it's not Black Lives Matter is not the only first protest group that people complain about. Hardly. Code Pink. You kidding? In this town, a lot of people hate Code Pink.
Yeah, they do.
Well, I forget what John McCain said about them, but he called them some crazy thing.
Yeah, he went off.
He went off on them, right? How about the Occupy movement? Whether they're shutting down streets and bridges in around the country, right? You don't think they got a lot of people who were like pissed off at them?
Yeah.
That's the nature of protest, right? I got no problem with the tactic. My question is the target. If there's one candidate among 22, 5 Democrats and 17 Republicans right now, who gets it, who is as strong on social justice as he is on economic justice, who has been there for the last 40, 50 years on these issues, it's Bernie Sanders. As Bernie said in L.A. the other night, I don't know whether he actually used this phrase. I saw Sabrina Siddiqui was using it in her story. Hey, he said, I get your message. I'm your guy. If you look at who I am and what I've been talking about and how I've been using my career, I'm your guy. He does talk about social justice. He does talk about economic justice. He's the only one of all the candidates that I know of who talked about Michael Brown on this weekend and this anniversary of his death. Here's Bernie from L.A.
There is no president, none, 1 year after the death of Michael Brown, no president who will fight harder to end institutional racism than I will. No president who will push harder for fundamental changes in our criminal justice system.
Yeah, so is Bernie fair game? Sure, every candidate's fair game. But are they making the mistake to target Bernie and leave give everybody else a free pass? You bet they're making a mistake. Black Lives Matter making a mistake, in my humble opinion. How about yours? 866-55-PRESS. Let's get into it here on a Wednesday morning.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Silicon Valley, Santa Clara County is often portrayed as a role model for the rest of the country. The county has some of the highest salaries and most expensive real estate in America, thanks in large part to the phenomenal success of tech companies such as Google, Yahoo, Intel, Adobe, and of course Apple, the nation's wealthiest and most profitable company. But Santa Clara County also has a more unseemly distinction. I'm standing near downtown San Jose, inside what is by some accounts the largest homeless encampment in America. The Jungle, as it's known, occupies a 65-acre stretch of creek where about 300 people live in makeshift structures. It's less of a homeless encampment than a full-blown shantytown.
This being the largest homeless encampment in the United States, and with us having Silicon Valley with Steve Jobs and all this cash, we're not supposed to have this kind of homeless problem. You know what I mean?
I done been shot with a pellet gun like 4 times, attacked with baseball bats, my house set on fire.
This is like hell on earth. I mean, this is like something you will not see. You have to see to believe, actually. It's like fourth world conditions.
Hi, have you ever heard of a place called the Jungle?
Sorry?
A place called the Jungle, have you heard of it?
We're not making enough money really for conventional homes or housing, and we make too much money for subsidized homes. So we're kind of, floating between the oil and the water.
We told the landlady here if it would be possible to continue staying here. She said, no, you got to go. I already rented it out. We went and loaded things into a storage facility, and it's still there. And all the campgrounds and things that we saw were too far out of the city, like KOAs and that sort of thing. So what we decided to do was to move into the jungle. So that's what we did.
A few days ago, a woman named Lydia Hernandez was robbed inside of her tent. When she refused to hand over the money, the robbers slit her throat. When she still fought back, they bashed her head with an axe. She died a few hours later. Residents say that the police never come into the jungle, so they have to fend for themselves.
There's no law down there except our own, right? There's no law. So we could smoke dope all day in the open. The dope dealers ain't scared because, they're secure.
We go to the Fairmont Hotel and have a brunch or do a philanthropy. That's not going to cut it. We need billions of dollars to go into the inner cities and go into the jungle. Silicon Valley, the Bay Area is known for its innovation, its progressive thinking. It's one of the most progressive pockets in the United States, if not the world, and certainly one of the wealthiest. If we can't do it here, it won't happen anywhere. It's got to happen here.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Okay, 27 minutes after the hour. Let me put it this way. Remember the Republican debate last week? There was, out of 2 hours, there was one question on racial justice that went about police brutality, went to Scott Walker, who didn't get it at all.
At all.
It didn't answer the question.
Whiff.
And nobody else on the stage was asked to comment. You got 17 Republicans who don't get this at all, don't even think we ought to be talking about it. And Black Lives Matter is targeting Bernie Sanders? This is nuts. Paul up in Benton, PA. Hello, Paul.
Good morning. What these advocacy groups have to understand is that, and this is something they don't seem to get, you will never have social justice unless you have economic justice first. And, that's the bottom line.
Yeah, well, I would hope it's not. Paul, I hear you. I would hope it doesn't have to be one first and then the other. I think, and I think Bernie is saying this too, that we can pursue both. Look at Martin Luther King's message. He was marching, his protest, a lot of people say it was all about social justice. It was also about economic justice. Bernie is about economic justice, but also social justice. I think the two go hand in hand. We'll come back. More calls, a lot more calls coming up.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Officer, were you the one who arrested me? Gonna shake my hand? So I got invited to host a vigil called Carry the Names. And that's what they were doing, carrying the names of the people who were victims of deadly police force. Michael Brown, Eric Garner, Akai Gurley. I got a motion from Dragonfly from Stop Shopping Choir, and I started preaching. I preached up a storm as best I could, but about a minute and a half into my sermon, the place was flooded with police, Homeland Security, National Guard, state troopers, and I was pushed over and handcuffed so fast, down in the jail, down in the basement. Before you know it, I was out the door, put in prison overnight. The next morning, I'm in court. The same thing happens. I'm just rushed out of there. Then our lawyer, Wiley Steckler, gives me this iPhone. And there, in black and white, in the Gothamist, a popular paper,
is this charge by Adam Lisberg, the MTA law enforcement spokesperson for this grand place. His quote is that I, Reverend Billy, physically attacked a police officer. Unbelievable. The feeling of being robbed of my work and life and identity, just the fiction. I did not touch anybody. I did not look. I know how to do this. I'm trained in nonviolence. I did not do anything. It was right here. It was right here. It happened right here. I was simply arrested while I was speaking and taken away, and that's it. The cold feeling in my city, the city that I love, that city spokespersons whose salary I pay for with my taxes, that they would say this. I can just feel the rending apart of the community, that we are not that close. We're not. They are willing to say this, and they think that they can just say anything about anybody and get away with it. So we have something in the Church of Stop Shopping called radical forgiveness. Amen?
Cops and bankers love their children.
I forgive the police.
We gotta love them too. Cops and bankers love their mothers.
But I'll stay radical.
Mothers love their brothers. We gotta love them too.
But we'll wake up every morning forgiving each other, reaching out, touching, telling stories, having humor, being in a community together, sharing our children, sharing the streets, sharing the climate, being in the city together. But forgiving each other, being grateful to each other, helping each other out, living together, living together.
I got a daughter just turned 4. What do we do in the superstore? What do we do with the blood and the gore? The water's rising through our door. Love our children too. Love our children too.
Amen. Earth-alleluia.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
33 minutes after the hour, Wednesday, August 12, The Bill Press Show. Bernie Sanders and Black Lives Matter, the topic of the day, of the moment at any rate. Join us at 866-55-PRESS, where we are coming to you live from Washington, D.C., and brought to you today by the International Association of our 4 big unions that got together: sheet metal, air, rail, and transportation workers. Now call themselves the SMART Union, giving a fair day's work for a fair day's pay under President Joseph Sellers. And get more information by going to their website. Check out all their various activities at smart-union.org. As I say, protest, yes. Shut things down, yes. Make sure that everybody gets the message, Black Lives Matter, and that they're talking about it along with other important issues. Yes, yes, yes. But why start with Bernie Sanders, the best on these issues, as good as anybody else? I would say better than anybody else. It's Bernie. Why beat up on your friend? Why punish a guy who's been with you the whole time? Let me, for example, okay, let's take Code Pink, right? And Medea Benjamin, who's our good friend and is in studio here all the time. I mean, Medea Benjamin, Code Pink is not sitting into Bernie Sanders' office, right? He opposed the war in Iraq. He opposed opposes what we're doing now. He opposes sending troops. They're not sitting in Barbara Lee's office, right? They go after the people who are the hawks, the warmongers. They'll go after a John McCain or a Lindsey Graham. You target the people who are your political enemy. Isn't that pretty basic?
You've been in a lot of these movements, right? Over the years, you've protested many different things.
Yes, I'm embarrassed to say I've never been arrested.
That's actually shocking.
I mean, I find
that's actually shocking to me that you haven't been arrested.
Well, the day's not over yet, Bill. So just be careful.
That's right. That's right.
But I've participated in so many protests, starting with the People's Park March in Berkeley.
Yeah.
Right? That I feel I should have been arrested over
the years. Have you ever heard of this where you have the one ally out of the 22 people running for president now? The one. No. The one who's been more outspoken on this than anybody else. That's where you go.
And by the way, Hillary has a great record, too, on race relations. She really does. And there's a good reason they're not targeting Hillary, because they can't get close to her.
Right.
And now she met with some of their activists yesterday, but they wanted to make a big thing. They wanted to push it. And the Secret Service wouldn't even let them in the room.
Yeah.
Okay? The Bernie's got this huge crowd, and everything is open, and anybody who wants to can come, and there's no admission, and there's no Secret Service. So they go after him because he's an easy target. Come on. Steve is up in New York. Hello, Steve. Thanks for joining us.
Bill.
Hi, what's up?
I'm a huge fan of yours, by the way.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you.
I really am. I'm a huge fan of yours and Stephanie Miller, and I'm a progressive and a liberal.
All right. Yeah, and you're in the right place. Okay. I hear a but there, Steve.
I'm African-American.
Yeah.
Okay. And I understand what you're saying. I really get it. Why go after Bernie? I support Bernie. I really think I was very happy when he got into the race. I think he's a great guy. Hell, if he gets the nomination, I'll vote for him. But here's the deal. Everyone is talking about Black Lives Matter, including, guess who? Donald Trump. If they hadn't done that, who'd be talking about it? And would it be that big a deal?
No, good point. But I think they'd be talking about it if they went after Donald Trump, for example, at a rally. Don't you think?
But Donald Trump
Jeb Bush.
I understand. No. I get that. I really do. I truly understand that. But they went after Bernie, and everyone is talking about it because they went after Bernie. And it brings it to the fore. You have to understand, being an African-American, I've had some crap happen to me over my lifetime. I'm in my late 60s now.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you something. I get it that black lives have never mattered in this country for too long. And,
amen. Yeah.
This is something that has to be brought to the fore. Listen, I've got 4 children. I have 2 sons and 2 daughters. My oldest son served in the military, went to Iraq, went to Afghanistan. I have another son who's in his mid-20s. I don't want to see him shot down like a dog. He's really a good kid. He works 2 jobs and he goes to school. Black Lives Matter. We've got to start somewhere. They started with Bernie.
Yeah. Now let me grant you this point, Steve. I can see the raising the issue even with Bernie and with Martin O'Malley. They started there. Martin O'Malley has come out with a really good racial justice platform. So has Bernie. And I just hope now that they're going to take the message to some of these people who really deserve it too. And that's what I want to see. And I think I'd be willing to grant they've had some success so far, but I still think, and that's where this woman and I disagreed last night, that just singling out Bernie, no. There are other people that deserve it more than Bernie.
It's there is something to the fact that we are talking about this because they've targeted Bernie.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? And so many people on the right side of most of these issues, progressives, they could use a little wake-up call too about the Black Lives Matter movement.
And it is an important issue.
Oh yeah.
I think to remind people, you can't just talk about economic justice. You can't just talk about the minimum wage without talking about, the fact that young black men the unemployment rate is like 50% among young black males. the rate of incarceration, the percentage of young black males in prison for nonviolent drug offenses, these are issues you've got to talk about at the same time. That is an extremely important message. Hey, Steve, good to hear from you. Thanks for sticking with us as long as you have, all of us in the progressive movement. Frank from down in Asheville, North Carolina, 880 The Revolution. Hey, Frank.
Hey, good morning, Bill.
Right.
Frank from Asheville, North Carolina. Yeah, I kind of agree with your previous caller. It's brought attention that I don't think would have been brought before. I agree with you, by the way. You know,
It has. But now beat up on Scott Walker and beat up on Jeb Bush. These guys don't even want to talk about it, right?
Well, you're right, Bill. It's time for that to happen. However, it's given Bernie an opportunity to show people how situations, crises, emergencies, whatever you want to call it, this Black Lives Matter situation, how to handle situations. I don't think any of the Republicans, and I don't know if Hillary, could possibly handle it as well as he did.
That's a very good point. Yeah.
And now, but it goes to show you how he might handle other situations also.
Very good. Hey, hold on just a second. I want to play. This is Donald Trump yesterday. For example, you mentioned how others might handle it. First of all, let's go back. Just make sure all of our listeners and viewers remember what Bernie did was when they took over the podium. Remember, Frank? Bernie just stepped back, right? He didn't confront them. He didn't scream at them. He didn't say, you have your say. Give me my say. Bernie just said, it's your show. He just stepped back. And then he put out this platform just to let people know exactly where he does stand and has always stood on the issues. And he hired Simon Sanders as his new press secretary, who was a leader of the Black Lives Matter movement. I thought he handled it very well. Now, here's what Donald Trump said about that, Frank.
That will never happen with me. I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people will. But that was a disgrace. The way I felt badly for him. But it showed that he's weak.
Oh.
No, you see, Trump would have made an ass of himself if that happened to him, right?
But he has all along, so it doesn't matter.
Well, that's true. Yeah. And as I said with Hillary, they didn't even get close to her because the Secret Service took care of it. Right. So, no, excellent point, Frank. Thanks for your call. We'll see you down in Nashville soon. We're making plans to come down and see you. As long as Brian Hall lets us in town, I know Mary Elizabeth will. She'll welcome us, but Brian, he's tough. Chuck is up in Baltimore, Maryland. Hey, Chuck.
Hey, how's it going?
Up in Baltimore.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right. So look, this is really infuriating to me because we have so much to lose here. We've got a chance to get something right. We've got a lot to lose.
But how so? Who's risking things here?
Well, what I mean is, for instance, here in Baltimore, as you know, we had the riots here,
boy.
And fortunately, things didn't really go south because none of the rioters killed anybody. If they had started killing people, we would have gotten wounded in ways that would have taken a lot longer to recover.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so these guys, so I'm a military planner, and these guys are violating my first principle, which is do no thing that your adversary would have you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right, and that's exactly what they're doing. They're serving the interests of the Republicans here and those who don't care by going after Bernie because he's the one guy that stands out of the whole pack that could possibly propose and implement solutions that would make a difference,
and who really does get it, I think, and does get the connection between economic justice and racial inequality, and does talk about it. Yeah, that's my fear too. Is that that some, and I think we have to be careful here because I said early on, this movement is a very loosely organized movement. It's sort of like the Occupy movement. There's no real leader. There's no real tight organization, right, or discipline. And some have pointed out that these two women in Seattle were even part of an outrider group of Black Lives Movement. They weren't part of it.
It's
and some people in the Black Lives Movement operation have suggested that those two women owe an apology to the Black Lives movement, if you will. So, it gets complicated. But the point was, and I think Chuck was making the point, is that they risk sabotaging their own efforts.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
They risk undermining their own efforts. So anyhow, all right, let's just wrap this up by just saying, a point made with Bernie, okay? Now get off his back. Go after the people that deserve it. David Jackson at the White House next.
This is the Bill Press Show.
When I started learning about nutrition, about which, by the way, much less is known than you might think, I learned that what mattered most about one's health was not necessarily the nutrients, good or bad, that you were consuming or staying away from, or even the calorie counts. But what predicted a healthy diet more than anything else is the fact that it was being cooked by a human being and not a corporation. Corporations cook very differently than people do. They use vast amounts of salt, fat, and sugar, much more than you would ever use in your own cooking. And the reason they do that is those are three incredibly attractive and incredibly cheap ingredients. And when they're layered properly, as in a chip or pastries and forms of junk food, they're incredibly addictive. They really press our buttons. They activate our dopamine network, our cravings. And in fact, people in the industry, they don't talk about addiction in the food industry, even though they traffic in addiction. They talk about craveability. It's the same thing. And snackability is another term they use. It's a lovely word. And then the last point about corporate cooking that's important to understand is they cook different stuff than you do at home. What they're good at, in general, they don't cook that well, but things like chips, they cook incredibly well. And here's a classic food that if you make it yourself, if you've ever made French fries, you have to wash the potatoes, you have to peel the potatoes, you have to slice the potatoes, you have to fry them in a lot of oil, you have to spatter your entire stovetop, you have to clean up, and then you have this pot of oil you have to get rid of. I mean, it's really difficult, and it's a pain. They're wonderful, but it's a pain. And if you make them yourself, you'll only eat them every 6 weeks, 2 months, because it's too much work. But when you let corporations cook for you, it's so simple and so inexpensive, and they're really good, that you will have them twice a day, as many people in America do. So you see the kinds of foods you end up with are these labor-intensive foods and desserts. These special occasion foods become everyday foods when we let industry cook for us. Eat anything you want, just cook it yourself.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. But it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
Seen on Free Speech TV and online on Talker TV. This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, here we go. 11 minutes before the top of the hour on a Wednesday. Breaking news. Donald Trump at his big speech in Michigan yesterday said, when I'm president, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that USA Today fires David Jackson. I don't have to deal with him in the briefing room.
I'll be right down there with Megyn Kelly.
Yeah. Pretty good company, David.
Yeah.
David Jackson at the White House for USA Today. Hello, David. How are you?
Fine, Bill. How are you?
Kind of quiet around there these days. What's going on? What do you hear from the vineyard? Just golf,
nothing,
golf, huh?
Nothing. I think he called in the morning yesterday. So aside from a round of golf, we haven't he hasn't popped his head out of the hole since Saturday. So it's very quiet, low key.
It was rainy, wasn't it, yesterday? I think.
Yeah, well, it was a little rainy, but I think he's catching up on his sleep. Quite frankly, I think that's a lot of what he's doing.
But they don't even put out a schedule of events, right?
No,
nothing. Meanwhile, is there any Iran activity going on? I mean, is somebody working the phones on Iran?
He may be making calls. I assume a lot of his aides are making calls, but I think they're. Aside from organizing new attacks on Chuck Schumer, I don't see a whole lot of activity publicly. I do think they're just trying to make sure they hold their 34 votes in the Senate that they'll need to preserve the agreement.
Is the vice president in house?
No, he's in South Carolina on vacation, trying to figure out whether he wants to run for president or not.
Oh, got it. Yeah,
so he's doing a little vacation thing too. So it's been much more low key. But my understanding is this is the week he's going to decide one way or another on whether to pursue the presidency. So hopefully we'll hear something soon on that front.
Yeah, well, I saw that John Kerry was giving a couple of interviews yesterday, and we have Secretary Ernest Moniz on tomorrow to talk about Iran. So I guess again, some of the administration.
Well, that's true. Kerry and Moniz, they've been doing a ton of media interviews on that to try to sell the agreement. So, yeah, they're doing the public game. I'm more concerned about, I'm wondering what they're doing behind the scenes, and I haven't heard that much. I assume they're making calls just to make sure they got their 34 votes. They'd like to get 40 votes if they can, but who knows the way it's going. They lost Schumer, and they may lose some other Democrats.
Now, last time we talked, you were heading out to Cleveland for the big show. You got your money's worth, huh?
It was amazing. Yeah, it was quite right off the bat. I mean, I had to write the running story, and I got to give Trump credit. He gave us the headline right off the bat when he refused to promise he'd support the Republican nominee and wouldn't rule out a third-party bid, which I still think that was the most interesting part of the debate. And then, of course, the whole Megyn Kelly thing and the way that blew up in the next couple of days. It kept me busy throughout the weekend.
Well, give Fox News credit, too, for starting the debate off with that question. I mean, I thought it was a brilliant move, right?
Oh, very much so. They were aggressive with a lot of the candidates.
Whoa,
and there were a lot of things that are going to come back up. Marco Rubio basically saying no exceptions for abortion. I think that issue's going to come back up. And there were the whole Christie Rand Paul exchange over surveillance techniques. I think that you'll hear a lot about that. So it was a very good debate.
Oh yeah, it was really lively. And by the way, the kids' table debate, the happy hour debate, was and they were pretty. They weren't as aggressive, but those questions were still tough and challenging questions. I thought overall they did a good job.
Well, I think the kiddie debate actually decided something. I think it kept Carly Fiorina alive because she did. I mean, I've never seen that. These Insta polls they do, I've never seen anyone dominate them the way she did after that debate. I mean, I think most everyone you talked to felt like she was the clear winner. I thought Rick Perry did well, but I think a lot of people just don't see it for him. And
you know what? I did too. I mean, I thought I was more impressed with him than I was with Carly, to tell the truth. I thought
I think he's run a really good campaign, but I think what happened 4 years ago, he just can't overcome it. And now we've gotten the news that he's not paying his campaign staff, and his numbers, which weren't great to start with, are going down a little bit. So I'm not sure he's going to be around much longer, I'm afraid.
Now, you went down to Atlanta for the Red State gathering later in the week?
That's right. After topping a story at 12:30, I got on a plane at 6 a.m. to head to Atlanta.
Jesus.
All fired up. And then it was interesting. Eric Erickson's Red State gathering, he had a good crowd there. Perry was there. Chris Christie was there and did a good job of firing people up. And it was quite interesting for a while there. And then we were all looking forward to seeing Bushwalker and Trump on Saturday. And then, lo and behold, around midnight on Friday, we learned that Trump had been disinvited because of a comment he'd made about Megyn Kelly on CNN. So the weekend got revved up in a real big hurry all of a sudden.
Now, it's interesting that Trump and Fox and Megyn Kelly have all made up right now. So.
Seems that way, right?
By the way.
Yeah, it's just, it's just... Did you hear the tape of what Trump said on CNN about Kelly?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, any other candidate would have been destroyed by that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And he's still, he is, I think he's moved beyond that now, right? And
I guess it would seem so. I do think he's topped out a little bit. I see some of the numbers I see he's leveled off a little bit and even falling a little bit. So, and I think it's still a little too early to really assess how much damage he might have sustained this weekend.
He'll still be part of the second debate.
No doubt about it. He'll still be ahead at that time, I suspect.
All right, David. Fun to catch up with you again. We got to run along. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you, Bill.
All right,
bye.
See you, David Jackson at the White House, USA Today.
This is the Bill Press Show.
gets you into college? Good SAT scores? High GPA? Lots of extracurriculars?
Sure, but what you really need is money.
If you don't have the cash, you'll need a loan.
And we mean huge student loans because the cost of college has risen 1,000% in the last 30 years.
This means big money for the banks that collect fees and interest.
Now, millions of young people are starting their adult lives with an average of $29,000 of loans on their backs.
Altogether, we're talking $1.2 trillion in student debt.
And more people are finding it impossible to pay them back. Welcome to the student debt crisis.
The increasing demand for higher education and cuts to state funding gave colleges a huge incentive to keep inflating prices.
I graduated about a year ago, currently in $35,000 of debt.
I am in debt about like $25,000.
I owe $23,000.
I owe over $50,000 in student loans.
38.8 million Americans owe money on a student loan.
And the biggest names in banking are making huge profits off the booming student loan industry. Sallie Mae, the largest provider of private student loans, made $949 million last year.
They only give you about 6 months to look for a job. You have to start paying back the loan. It's very pressuring, especially nowadays. It's very hard to find a job.
Over half of the students graduating in 2012 could not find a decent paying job.
They either had low-wage jobs or unpaid internships or were unemployed altogether.
So you can't make the payments. You start incurring late fees, which makes the loan even harder to pay off.
And it stays with you for years, even decades.
Right now, a third of the people who started repaying their loans are delinquent or in default.
That's 13.7 million people, more than the populations of Chicago, New York, and San Francisco combined.
Worse, it's not just the borrowers who are in trouble. Many loans require co-signers.
So if the student is unable to pay, that co-signer, a father, a mother, or a grandparent, is now on the hook.
Even a grandparent's Social Security benefits can be garnished to pay the loan.
We should have an answer to this. If you get really behind in your car payment or your credit cards, you can file for bankruptcy.
But Congress has made it nearly impossible to discharge student loans through bankruptcy.
Big institutions make big profits while students try to make ends meet under crushing debt.
Is this how we want our education system to work?
The whole point of going to college is to get the career you want. But lately that's been discouraged because no one can afford school. You get a job just to pay off your student loans.
We need higher education, not higher debt.
Sign up to end the student debt crisis at higherednotdebt.org.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You bet it is. Wednesday, off to a good start here on August 12, and a lot more coming up. I don't know whether you heard about this report on air traffic controllers not getting enough sleep, falling asleep on the job just when we're on board that flight, counting on them to get us down safely. Maybe we shouldn't. Kris Van Cleave from the CBS News will join us at the top of the next hour. And a little bit later, Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky from Illinois will be here as well. So lots coming up, lots of good reasons to stay right here on the Bill Press Show. We'll be back and talk
This
air traffic controllers.
is the Bill Press Show.
I'm a Piston fan. Their slogan was, "We come to work." That's what Detroit about. That's why they used it. It's a team thing. They won 2 championships, a team. There was no star. No mayor can come in here and be a star. It's a team thing. No governors can come in here and think you can do it by yourself. It's a team thing. You got communities. They got ideas too. The only thing wrong with Detroit, people had lost hope here. Residents, city workers, so much corruption. They lose hope. But I grew up here. I love this city. I think it can come back. I've been working for the city 24 and a half years. Within the last 10 years, we took 4 pay cuts and then an additional 10% wage cut. I've lost a home.
When you take all of the decisions out of the city of Detroit, all of us, then what do you have? Exactly what we got, a lot of problems. Every time the city seems to fall into a problem, it's always on the backs of us workers.
You wake up out of a dead sleep and you jump behind the wheel and take off driving and try to get everybody there safe, not knowing really what you're pulling up to. I'm not eligible for Social Security, so the pension is my sole salary at this point.
We've been in business here 39 years. We've seen a lot of changes in Detroit. The area was a lot of industry, a lot of city workers. It's getting very tough for the city workers. It's getting tough for us as a business people.
Response times are increasing because of the closing of companies, which takes your insurance rate through the roof. So all the things that affect us affect the citizens.
I worked for the city in different capacities for 29 years. I feel like an old jacket. They use me up and they throw me away. In my condition, nobody's gonna hire me. I'm 68 years old. Half the times, I can't get my blood pressure medicine. It's either feeding myself, blood pressure, or paying bills.
$754. By the time they take all the deductions for I have my car insurance, my house insurance, and my health insurance taken out. So the time they take all that, I'll get about $300 after they take all that out. I don't understand it. I can't see how the governor is allowing this to happen and what they're doing and they want to blame it all on the seniors. Not only the seniors, but the city workers. And we worked hard. I know I worked hard.
I've been in Detroit since 1946. I was 14 years old when I came in. I don't live large at all. I wish I could. I don't know when the last time I've been shopping. I only get $1,100, and I'm 81 years old, and I need every penny that I can get and that I do get. And I'm very, very upset about the idea of them taking away my pensions that I worked 30 years for.
I think it's terrible that they talk about Detroit like they do, because Detroit has been very good to me.
I have a lot of city workers coming in with their uniforms on, Detroit Water Department, Police Department, Fire Department. I get a lot of people, the Border Patrol come in. So if I lose that customer base, I'm going to be in a position where I might have to close down. If they take away their pensions, if they start cutting jobs, it's going to cut into a large percentage of not only our business, but other businesses that are in the city of Detroit. We're here. We've been here for 26 years. We're still trying to do business in the city.
Detroiters are survivors. They tough, they adapt, but only can do so much when your politicians ahead of you and we're not on the same team. We're not gonna let Detroit be erased, bulldozed, or wherever. We're gonna fight to the bitter end. Detroit gonna survive.
Just this month, my bill was like $138.
Even at one phone call a week cost me $40 to $50 every month.
I am living on a fixed income of SSI, so this is really a great hardship. Families are being punished when they incarcerate their children, they incarcerate the whole family.
In 2011, the Media Action Grassroots Network, Working Narratives, and Prison Legal News founded the Campaign for Prison Phone Justice, an effort to call on the FCC to address the cost of interstate phone calls. The campaign mobilized prisoners to send hundreds of letters. Advocates and families filled out postcards, met with elected officials, and signed petitions. Partnerships were formed across the political spectrum and with groups in the criminal justice, civil rights, and public interest community. The film distribution company Participant Media and director Ava DuVernay joined the fight through a social action campaign tied to the release of the feature film Middle of Nowhere. In an effort to push the FCC to act, the campaign hosted a historic rally outside of the Federal Communications Commission where for the first time, families of prisoners, elected officials, civil rights and faith leaders came together to call for an end to predatory phone rates.
We're all held captive when predatory phone companies gouge our families.
My son has been incarcerated now for over 10 years, and my husband estimates that in the time we spent over $25,000 on prison phone calls.
My hero's not yours, you probably arrested them. Your schools probably neglected them. They spawn thoughts, you probably infected them. Feed us what you feed us, you can lay us next to them. FBI call it major crimes. Babies making babies cry.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
All right, Bernie Sanders is ahead in New Hampshire, and Donald Trump surges ahead in Iowa. What's the connection here? I'm trying to figure it out. Hey, hello, everybody. Says something about politics today. You got it. The Bill Press Show, Wednesday, August 12th. Great to see you today. Thank you for being part of the program as we boom out to you all across this great country. Starting out in this great capital city of Washington, D.C. Pretty quiet in Washington. Pretty lonely here these days. President Obama left town. Joe Biden left town. So did the Senate. So did the House. What are we doing here? Maybe some of us won't be around that much longer.
Foreshadowing.
Hint. But those of us who are here, we're in business today, and glad to join you to recap the news of the day and to talk about it all with you. We'll tell you what's going on. You tell us what you think about it. 866-55-PRESS, our toll-free number. And, of course, you can send us your comments on Twitter at BP Show and on Facebook at facebook.com/Bill Press Show. Team Press, Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy leading it up. Hello.
Here we are.
Hey, good morning.
Jamie Benson there to take your calls. 866-55-PRESS and Monty Kanzler on the job as our videographer. Today we have a lot coming up. We're going to kick off this hour with Kris Van Cleave from CBS News to talk about this frightening story on air traffic controllers. Evan McMorris-Santoro, good friend, will be here as a friend of Bill in the final hour together, and we'll be talking with Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky from Illinois. All of that coming up. But first, Peter.
This is the Full Court Press.
Just a couple of other stories making news. It is a bad day to be a Jets fan. If you are a fan of the New York Football Jets, boy, oh boy, what a bad day yesterday. Their starting quarterback, Geno Smith, is going to be out for 6 to 10 weeks, all because he got in a fight in the locker room, and the linebacker for the Jets, IK Enemkpali, punched him in the face so hard that he broke his jaw.
Good. Oh, I mean, these guys, have they done better than that?
Here's what it all comes down to. It's the altercation started because the linebacker, Enemkpali, had a football camp that he had bought a $600 plane ticket for Geno Smith to come and attend, to come and help with the football camp. One of Smith's friends died in a motorcycle accident in the days before, so he canceled. And when Enemkpali came and looked for the money for the plane ticket, Geno Smith was not happy about it, so they put a finger in his face, and that's all it took for him to get punched in the face. Again, the linebacker, IK Enemkpali, has been released by the Jets, and the Jets are now stuck without their starting quarterback. Ryan Fitzpatrick will step into that role.
for the first couple of weeks for the Jets.
Boy. Bad news.
Hey, you know what? Brian Williams is back, baby. His suspension is officially over. Now, we don't know exactly when he's going to start on MSNBC. We know he's not coming back as the anchor of NBC News, but they say next month we should start to see him start to pop up a little bit more and more. So just be ready for it. September is going to be his big coming out party after his suspension.
MSNBC is going to become the Brian Williams channel.
I think so. I really do, especially if people welcome him back. And how about this? Yesterday for lunch, astronauts had a very, very interesting little meal. NASA's veggie product produced the first vegetables grown in space. And so they had a salad made out of these plants that were grown in space. It's pretty crazy, right?
I saw this as a headline. In the space station?
In the space station, they've grown vegetables. Not a ton of them, but they grew enough to make a couple of salads.
Like what? Like
there's romaine. They grew some romaine, red romaine lettuce. Not carrots. It was mostly leafy greens.
Leafy greens.
So it's not going to be like
more of a baby field green salad. I think we're looking at.
It's more of a side salad.
Oh, okay.
not a big entree salad. But they talk about all the problems with growing crops in space. Obviously, it's you've got the gravity, you've got the oxygen. There are a lot of problems there, but they made it work. They grew some romaine lettuce and they made a nice big salad.
The real challenge is getting those cows grazing and
really
in the back 40 of the space station.
The era of farming space.
Indeed. 11 minutes after the hour now. Here we go on the Wednesday edition of the Bill Press Show. I have told you many times that my evening news of choice is CBS News with Scott Pelley. I think they do a great job, and one of the great features of it is their great transportation reporter, good friend Kris Van Cleave, who did a story that I just could not believe the other night about this new report out on air traffic controllers. I was so interested in it, so we were able to persuade Kris Van Cleave, CBS's transportation correspondent, to join us this morning on the program on our news line. Hello, Kris. Good to have you with us.
Bill, always great to be here. And you didn't need to persuade me. You just had to ask.
That's true. I ask, and Kris shows up here. So, first of all, this report has been around for a while, right? And how did it happen to come out, and what does it show?
So, this is one of the really interesting things about this report. The FAA had contracted with NASA to create this report, and the work started back in 2009. The report was submitted in 2012, and for the most part, we were just learning about it this week when, after battling through the FOIA process, the Associated Press, to their credit, was able to get their hands on this report. Now the FAA says they did send it to Congress last year, but that's not exactly the same as it was widely released.
No, hardly. Now, what triggered this report in the first place?
Well, if we think back 4 or 5 years ago, there were a series of incidents of air traffic controllers falling asleep. And if you go back to 2006, Lexington, Kentucky, the Com Air crash, where that commuter plane with 50 people on board tried to take off from the wrong runway. Easy for me to say this morning. 49 people died in that crash. And one of the factors that was listed by the National Transportation Safety Board was air traffic controller fatigue as a contributing factor to these pilots taking off from the wrong runway. The then NTSB chairman, Mark Rosenker, who does happen to be a CBS News aviation analyst now, sent a letter to the FAA after this accident, after this investigation, asking them to look at air traffic controller fatigue as an issue. That sort of got the ball rolling and prompted this report that came out, or that was given, rather, to the FAA in 2012.
And the findings show that a pretty appalling lack of, at least, I don't know whether things have changed, that's one of the things we got to get to, but pretty appalling lack of sleep on the part of some of these controllers before they, particularly on the overnight shifts, right?
Yes. Now, what they found, and maybe that's not a surprise, that if you work overnight, you're tired, but what they found was that 61% of air traffic controllers that they surveyed admitted to catching themselves about to doze off on the job. And a third told NASA researchers they'd experienced what amounts to a close call while directing air traffic within the previous 12 months. And 60% of those people, let me check, 60% of those folks felt that fatigue was a real factor. So you have a large number back then saying that they were running into fatigue and they felt it was affecting their decision-making.
Now, are there any rules does the FAA have any rules about how many hours of sleep or rest you're supposed to have before you go on the job as an air traffic controller?
So one of the things that the FAA says, one of the reasons they didn't put this report out, and there are probably two. One, in a letter dated July of last year when this was sent to Congress, the FAA said they did not accept the report. They had some disagreement over the method that was used to gather the evidence, if you will, in this report. But that same letter lays out a host of changes that the FAA has implemented, the largest of which being a fatigue management and mitigation program. What they've done is they've limited the ability for controllers to sort of back their shifts up, so they work a really intense 4-day period and then are off for 3 days. They've increased the amount of rest between shifts, that kind of thing. And we talked to the FAA administrator yesterday on an unrelated story, and he wasn't able to say why this report wasn't released sooner, but in fairness, it does predate his time there. What he did say is that you're not hearing anymore about incidents of controllers falling asleep.
Well, okay. Part of your story was there were these two incidences where at the national airport right here in Washington, where planes landed on their own because they couldn't raise anybody in the tower?
Yeah, so that was 2011. So right about the time this report is being written, you had a really good example as to why fatigue needed to be looked at. And that was simply you had a controller working around midnight who, by all accounts, fell asleep. And the pilots of these two airliners were talking to the regional air traffic controller, not the folks at the tower, but the folks out in Warrenton, Virginia, which is, about if with traffic, it's like a forever drive away from Washington, but it's 60, 70 miles out. They were in contact with them, but they essentially had to land themselves. They had to treat it as though they had to treat it as though the tower wasn't staffed, sort of look both ways, come in and land, and then find their own way to the gate.
It's a good thing the lights were still on.
Right.
That's just unbelievable. So, as a member of the traveling public, and I'll be flying tomorrow, I mean, should we now kind of rest comfortable that this problem has been resolved?
I think you have to be honest. Anytime you have a 365-day, 24/7-hour operation,
right?
You've got to monitor fatigue, and you see that in any industry. The FAA has a program that they've improved since this report came out to monitor fatigue, and we're not seeing reports like we were if you go back to 2009, 2010, 2011, where there was this whole, cluster of these incidents where controllers appeared to be falling asleep on the job. We're not hearing those reports like we were. So I think, to some extent, this report and the actions the FAA has taken has started to address the problem, certainly is watching it much closer than they were, say, in 2006, which is what prompted this report that we found out about 4 years after it was written.
Okay, so a little comfort level there. Now, a related story is the one you did last night about the Walmart truck driver that ended up in this accident with Tracy Morgan, which was another case of lack of sleep, right?
Absolutely.
Truck drivers.
Right. What the FAA found was the probable cause in the Tracy Morgan crash was this driver had apparently been up for about 28 hours. And before he got to work in Delaware, he drove overnight 800 miles from his home in Georgia, then started his shift.
800 miles.
Yeah. How's that for a commute?
Yeah, right?
and then it was at 13 and a half hours of his maximum 14-hour workday when this accident happened.
Whoa!
So that's
crazy.
So he had driven 8 hours to get to work, and then jumps in the truck and starts his workday.
He'd driven 800. Right, exactly.
Good Lord, yeah. And now, is this just Walmart, or is it this truckers across the board is a problem? What did you find?
So the NTSB.
Yeah.
The NTSB renewed a recommendation they made in 2010, which is that the Federal Motor Coach Safety Administration mandate fatigue management program, similar to what the FAA has implemented, frankly.
Yeah.
Walmart, since this crash, has begun implementing that program and increased training. One of the things the Walmart program now looks at is how long the commute to work is.
Yeah.
So this is something the FAA has asked for before, and it hasn't gotten done. And we have seen this is coming at this, just a few months after an effort in Congress and from the trucking lobby to roll back some of the stricter time limit requirements on truck drivers. So there is a fatigue issue with folks on the road. The government implemented new work hours, so it limits the amount of time they can work. But in this case, had the truck driver decided to rest, he actually still would have gotten paid. So there's some real questions about his decision-making that went into this accident, certainly, and he's now facing criminal charges, so that's up for a court to decide. His lawyer quite resoundingly rejected the NTSB findings and said you can't produce evidence that he'd been up for 28 hours driving. The driver did not participate in the NTSB investigation.
Is it up to the individual trucking company? I mean, you see so many of these big trucks, 18-wheelers on the road. Is it each individual trucking company that has its own rules, or
there are maximum work days? You can only be on the road. Right now, it's for example, this trucker was going to time out at 14 hours, which would have been in the middle of the route he was driving.
Yeah.
So there are some federal requirements, but the monitoring the fatigue and how far the truck driver can drive before he gets to work, that type of thing, there are not very good regulations, if any at all. And the trucking industry says, one of the real challenges is you can put down all kinds of rules about when they're driving the truck, but it's a lot harder to regulate their drive to work.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, absolutely. I don't think most people even think that's part of the equation, right?
It is if it's 800 miles.
Absolutely right. Man, I got to tell you, I don't know whether it's safe to fly or safe to drive. Either one. Stay home. It seems a message here.
Statistically, you're very safe to fly, and the roads aren't that dangerous.
Thanks for that. I don't know. That may contradict everything you just told us, but at any rate.
Well, I mean, Bill, I've seen you drive, so maybe I should rephrase
that. Thank you, Kris. Kris Van Cleave, you can catch him almost every night on CBS Evening News. Hey, thanks, Kris, so much for your time.
No problem, Bill,
Appreciate
anytime.
All right, see you, Kris. Great correspondent covering transportation issues for CBS News.
This is the Bill Press Show.
I have run these canyons for 6 million years. I have traveled from the Rocky Mountains to the deserts, through scorching heat and freezing cold, from the land of the dinosaurs to fields of food.
I lend my hand to 7 states, 2 countries, 9 national parks,
and 36 million people across an arid West.
I am not the strongest or the largest, but I am the hardest working.
People love me.
My playfulness,
my beauty,
my power,
my life. but I don't think I can offer any more.
I am tired.
I am tired,
tapped, and tied.
Of the hundreds of major rivers in the world, I am one of the few who no longer kisses the sea.
Battles to harness my soul have been won and lost. Use me wisely, and I will sustain you.
Use me like you have, and I will break. My name is Red. The Grand River Red. The American Nile.
The Canyon Maker. I am the Colorado River.
And I am the most endangered river in America.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
This is the Bill Press Show.
You got it. I'm sure you've seen the news about that spill of the chemical spill out in Colorado, in a river there, the Orange River, they're now calling it. Tyson Slocum is here from Public Citizen to join us at the half hour to talk about that and some other energy issues. Meanwhile, on the political front, just a quick look at two important primary states with some polls that came out yesterday. Most interesting, perhaps, in New Hampshire. Bernie Sanders pulling significantly ahead of Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire. Who would have thunk it? But Bernie at 44 and Hillary at 37. And out in Iowa, how badly was Donald Trump hurt by the big debate and his contretemps with Megyn Kelly? Not so much.
Doesn't look like it.
The Suffolk University poll yesterday, statewide in Iowa among Republican caucus goers, shows Donald Trump out in front with 17%, followed by Scott Walker at 12%, Marco Rubio at 10%. Jeb Bush, not among, I'm not sure exactly where he is, but not among the top three. I think it's very interesting in terms of two people challenging the establishment. Bernie Sanders and Donald Trump leading the pack in Iowa and New Hampshire, which says something, I think, about the mood of the public, American public these days. Yep. Not happy with the way things are, looking for a change.
This is the Bill Press Show.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts. Stop the wrecks.
Before now, it's been difficult for criminals like us to know which states have loose gun laws. How would a criminal like me know which states permit me to carry loaded guns in their amusement parks, golf courses, or beaches?
I have some violent friends. We all wear leather jackets and scream at women. And we want to find out which states we can buy and sell guns easily.
CrimAdvisor.com. That's the site to find out where it's easiest for felons and fugitives to buy, carry, and even traffic guns.
That's why I love Arizona, where I can go see the beautiful Grand Canyon and carry a loaded gun without even having to get a background check.
You would fail that background check.
I'm sure of it. Now, what about a road trip? What states can I go to fill my trunk with guns and take it back home for my even more dangerous friends?
Crim Advisor has a list for that.
That's so unreasonable.
Our traffickers' top 10.
Nevada! What happens in Vegas may have to stay in Vegas, but your guns don't. Bring them over to California and sell them.
The market up there is hungry for guns.
I understand that crimadvisor.com will tell me which states really cater to us criminals and creeps, but what about the states where we're not so welcome? The ones that don't get us?
I don't even like saying the name of these states, but California, Connecticut, Maryland, and New York all have laws to keep guns out of the hands of people like us.
I want to shoot California so bad.
Boo, California.
Boo, go home. Wow. crimadvisor.com has all this information?
Sure does.
crimadvisor.com. Plan your perfect getaway. Oh, like TripAdvisor.
Oh.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies. In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water. Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now.
Please.
On your radio, on TV, and online. This is The Bill Press Show.
Make it 33 minutes after the hour. Wednesday, August 12, The Bill Press Show. Washington, D.C. is where we start out, but we end up with you wherever you happen to be in this great country of ours. And we're brought to you today by the International Brotherhood of Teamsters. Good to have you with us. The good men and women of the Teamsters Union under President Jim Hoffa. We all live better because of their good work, and you can check it out yourself at their website, teamster.org. Incredible story out of Colorado where you go to do a little rafting, a little fishing, a little swimming. You may have to jump into an orange river these days due to a chemical spill out there. What's that all about and who's responsible? Tyson Slocum deals with these issues as the Energy Program Director for Public Citizen and joins us here in studio this morning. Hello, Tyson. Nice to see you.
Hey, always great to be here, Bill.
Thank you. Governor Hickenlooper from Colorado spoke about this yesterday. He, first of all, said that this was that people are pretty upset about this, right? As you can imagine.
It is, in every sense, unacceptable. And I think we share the anger that something like this could happen.
And what happened and why?
So what happened is on August 7th, some private contractors that the Environmental Protection Agency had hired to investigate continued toxic seepage from this 100-year-old mine above Silverton, Colorado, accidentally breached a rudimentary dam that saw this trickle of toxic waste that had been going in, at 100 gallons a day or so into a 3 million gallon cascade of waste directly into a tributary which fed into the Animas River.
Yeah, the videos that I saw on the news, I mean, it just looks like a hole in the earth there, and the stuff is just flowing out, right?
Right. And so would
this had all been like plugged up for all these years?
That's correct. So this area of Colorado has tens of thousands of mines, and this particular mountain area, it's actually an old collapsed cone of a volcano, is very mineral rich. There's about 3,000 abandoned mines in this one small area. And the last one was operating in 1991, but a lot of them date back to the 1870s. And the issue here is that you've got thousands of abandoned mines, all with highly toxic compounds in them, and they've all been seeping. And so there's this one large Toronto-based mining conglomerate called Kinross Gold Corporation that claimed that they plugged up a nearby mine called the Sunnyside Gold Mine. And we believe that they did a poor job plugging that up, and that started seeping into this Gold King mine that the EPA contractors were checking out. And so there's been all this chatter in Washington, D.C., mainly by Republicans, saying, hey, the EPA caused this mess. Well, not exactly, right? Yes, an EPA contractor basically had a backhoe and caused this makeshift dam to break. But this was an issue that's been building up for decades. And in fact,
the mining companies originally, right?
Absolutely. So as usual, under federal law, private companies make a mess and the taxpayer ends up being held responsible, particularly for extractive industries, whether you're talking oil, gas, or in this case, mining.
So this is lead,
arsenic. It is nasty stuff. And then the thing is that there's often a compound found with gold mining called pyrite. And when that interacts with oxygen and with water, it turns water into very acidic. And so you've had this leaching of water over decades. And that's why the EPA, over the last 20 years, has proposed to the local community and to the state of Colorado, let's declare this area a Superfund site. And what that would do is give it national priority status. It would deliver billions of dollars to reclaim the area. And it would also try and identify corporations that are responsible and send the bill to them. And the local communities and the mining companies all blocked the Superfund designation because they said it's going to scare away future mining operations. And also members of the community in Silverton said, well, no tourists are going to want to come to an area.
That's a Superfund site, huh?
I don't think they also want to come to an area with a mustard-colored river.
Right. So what is the answer? Does this river like eventually flow into the, I don't know, Colorado or where?
No, it basically flows south from Colorado down into Navajo Nation in New Mexico, where it intersects with the San Juan River. And then that empties into Lake Powell in the southern end of Utah. So we don't have confirmation yet that the arsenic and other toxins have reached Lake Powell, but at some point they're going to.
And is the answer is just to let the flow of the river clean itself out?
Well,
it seems to be the only thing they're doing.
What can they do?
Well, they've set up some sort of treatment, and details on this are a little thin. close to where the breach occurred outside of Silverton, Colorado. But the fact of the matter is that their opportunities are very limited. And so the thing that's also important to understand is parts of this Animas River were toxic to begin with because toxins have been slowly leaking out for a century.
Yeah.
So this really is not a tale about some EPA contractor made a mistake and breached this dam. It's about decades-old broken policy where federal efforts to try and reclaim and aggressively clean up an area were blocked by industry and by locals that ended up not representing the interests of everybody else downstream. Because I think what we saw here is that officials in the immediate area had the loudest voices to block the Superfund designation. Meanwhile, people 50 miles south in Durango, people in Navajo Nation, people in Lake Powell, they're all impacted, and yet they didn't have an effective say over efforts to clean this up before the accident.
Are they warning people you can't swim here, you can't fish in this river, you can't kayak in or body con? But also, there's some. I saw some communities get their drinking water from this river downstream.
Of course.
Right?
So first,
it's a long stretch.
Right. No, this is a massive river.
Yeah.
When you look at it on the map, it is a lifeline for a lot of these communities.
Huh? Yeah.
So the Animas River is officially closed until at least August 17th. They've been doing a lot of testing. Some of that testing involves sticking some fish in a cage and seeing how long they live. I kid you not.
What a terrible test. That's awful.
Yeah.
So, and in fact, Hickenbopper, what's his name? Hickenlooper. It sounds like a Dr. Seuss character, actually. He went and visited.
Hickenlooper hears a who?
Exactly. And so this Dr. Seuss character, who happens to be governor, went and visited some of these caged fish, and he declared only one of them died, so things are looking good.
All right. Okay.
Now, I don't think
that doesn't inspire confidence.
I don't think he then grilled and ate them. So I think, I think that also says a lot.
Yeah.
Good. Now,
holy cow.
So is EPA? I think you answered this, but I mean, EPA's gotten a lot of flack over this, right?
Right.
And EPA's got some other problems they're dealing with right now. This gives the critics, if not the enemies of EPA, a lot of ammunition.
The EPA is kind of this year's Obamacare. You know, what we saw in 2010 where every single nation's ill was attributed to Obamacare. The EPA has now taken on that mantle, unfairly, of course. So there's no question that there needs to be some investigation into how much oversight the EPA had over the private contractor that was overseeing this work. That is the most important thing. But to say that the EPA is responsible for this toxic blunder is inaccurate. This is something that was a century in the making, and there is clear documentation that the EPA recognized that these abandoned mines posed a serious problem. They moved to try and designate them a Superfund site to give them the funding and the regulatory attention that this area needed. And it was local officials in the mining industry that blocked that effort. And so this is not a story about EPA incompetence. This is a story about a broken system where local officials have too much say over things that influence millions of people downstream from them. And you can't have a small collection of mining interests in a couple of Colorado towns make decisions that affect people all the way down in New Mexico and Utah.
Right. EPA's got another big priority right now, which are its new regulations regarding power plants announced by the president about 10 days ago now. And what impact will they have, and what are the chances that the power industry and some of the lobbyists here in town and Republicans in the Congress might be able to undo those? Tyson Slocum, he's got the answers. He's the Energy Director for Public Citizen. We'll be right back. Take your calls at 866-55-PRESS.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is why you took a second job. While you taught yourself how to fix the plumbing. While you'll do whatever it takes to keep your home. And that is why we want to help. We are making home affordable, a free government resource that can make paying the mortgage easier. Call 888-995-HOPE today.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
Press, congratulations on your 10th anniversary of a great radio show, letting Americans know what's really going on. Thanks.
All right, Jerry Brown, up early this morning out in California. Thank you, Governor. And thanks for the good wishes on our 10th anniversary year. Tyson Slocum here. He's the Director of Public Citizens Energy Program, citizen.org. Easy enough to follow all of their great work on top of the energy issues. So, as I mentioned, EPA is now out with its new regulations. Now, these cover, first of all, existing and new power plants, right?
That's right.
And they've already been through the public review process, so these are now the rules of the land.
That's correct. These are now the final rules. And so first, a little bit of background. This all started in 2007 when the John Roberts Supreme Court ruled 5-4 that the Environmental Protection Agency must regulate greenhouse gas emissions under its existing Clean Air Act authority. The Bush administration dragged its feet for 2 years. To its credit, the Obama administration, when they got in January 2009, immediately started the process of putting these regulations in place. The first thing they did was already completed rules, greenhouse gas emission rules over tailpipe emissions for cars and trucks, and that was something that was done with the support of the auto industry. So for the last couple of years, we've had these proposed rules over new power plants and existing power plants, which is huge because existing power plants, particularly coal, is the single largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States that's impacting climate change. When you look at the details of these rules, Bill, they are incredibly modest. There's something that electric utilities are going to be able to comply with. And we at Public Citizen have done a number of studies in key states looking how the rule will actually benefit consumers, because rather than traditional regulation where the EPA says, okay, you've got a harmful pollutant and that's bad and you're going to stop emitting that. Instead, they're like, you don't need to shut down your coal plant right away. You can instead invest in energy efficiency and renewable energy to displace that coal-fired power plant.
Yeah.
So you can, instead of investing $500 million or $1 billion in building a new power plant, you can say, instead, you, the utility, invest $500 million or $1 billion in incentives to households and businesses to use energy more wisely, to have more energy efficient appliances, weatherization, install rooftop solar, things like that. So when you look at the details of this rule, it isn't that difficult for utilities to comply. It provides tons of flexibility and opportunities for states to provide all sorts of benefits for household consumers. This rule is a great first step, and especially if it's viewed in conjunction with the Obama administration's efforts internationally to negotiate a global climate treaty, because now the president can go to China, he can go to India and say, okay, listen, you've all said that you're not going to do anything until we do. Well, now we're doing something. We've got regulations that are going to be very difficult for Congress to overturn. I think it's going to be very difficult for the Supreme Court to throw them out. We now have the negotiating chip we need to trigger an international treaty to address climate change.
Is there an effort on the part of the power industry to overturn them, to get Congress to undo them? And can Congress undo them?
Congress can undo them, but they don't have the votes. And so that's why elections matter, because as we go into this silly season of the next presidential race, you're going to see a caricature of what the EPA rules represent. And so what you're seeing...
And Mitch McConnell's been telling states to just ignore them.
Right. A deeply irresponsible position for the Senate Majority Leader to be taking publicly. But the bottom line is what we're seeing is privately utilities are telling the EPA and others, this is a workable plan. But they are using, for electoral, political purposes, they're funding attacks on the EPA as part of a broader electoral narrative of demonizing regulations and trying to use it to the Republicans' advantage. And that's what's so upsetting about all of this, is because you've got what everybody acknowledges to be a modest, workable rule, but the public discourse on it, particularly by fossil fuel interests, is really irresponsible and is distorting the details of what this rule actually will do.
All right. Now, I know you know your stuff, but I have to challenge you on something here. Peter will remember the last time we talked about these rules when they came out. You said the power plants are the number one source of the greenhouse gases.
Right.
We had a caller come in who insists that cows, in fact, are the number one source of
everyone's favorite argument.
Right. Unless...
How do you respond to that? It caught me flat-footed.
There's no question that agriculture emissions play a role, but they are nowhere in the scope of where
power plants
energy-related and specifically power plant emissions are. The burning of coal to boil water to generate steam to turn a turbine is far and away the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in the United States.
Power plants worse than cow farts. I guess we could,
now we know.
Now we know. 5 seconds. Where's the Keystone Pipeline?
I don't think it's going to be approved, and at this point, I think that Canada's probably, and TransCanada, the company, is probably given up on it. There's some rumors that TransCanada may try to sue under NAFTA to recover damages for the pipeline not being approved.
We don't hear anything about it, and it's still sitting at the State Department.
That's right. I don't think that the Obama administration is going to approve it. And you also have to look, there were some big elections recently in Alberta that kicked out the pro-pipeline Conservatives.
Oh, really?
And the Conservatives in Canada are having trouble for their national election. You might see some political changes in Canada as well that will also spell doom for the Keystone Pipeline.
All right, Tyson, thanks for bringing us up to date on a lot of important stuff. All right, and thanks for the great work you're doing.
Well, thank you. It's always my pleasure.
All right, at citizen.org, Public Citizen. Thanks, Tyson. We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Hour number 3, are you ready for it? Well, we got a big one coming up here, so don't go anywhere. On Free Speech TV, you're going to have to wait until 5 p.m. Eastern, 4 Central to watch us, but right away you can switch over to the video stream to catch Evan McMorris-Santoro, a good friend of Bill, in studio for the entire hour as a friend of Bill. He's been on the road with Bernie Sanders in Seattle and in Portland, and he'll tell us all about the West Coast trip. And Congresswoman Jen Schakowsky will be here from Chicago, talk about her efforts to build support for the Iran nuclear deal. Hour number 3 coming up.
A few years ago, plastic bag waste in our city came to a tipping point. It was clear. We had a bag problem. My department was tasked to reduce plastic bag consumption. We needed to come up with ways to change human behavior. So we asked ourselves, would you like a bag? What do people really hate?
Yep.
Getting punched in the stomach. Preliminary studies showed that the consequences weren't severe enough to warrant behavioral change.
Actually, can I get that double bagged?
So we thought, what do people hate more than getting punched in the stomach? Kissing Helga.
Hey, big boy.
People didn't find her so offensive after all, so we had to get creative.
How many bags? Okay, now, pour this ice water down your pants.
We tried everything.
Eat this rat. Defuse this bomb.
Even fighting your clone. After blowing through millions of dollars of government funds on research, I came up with a brilliant idea.
Why don't we just charge 5 cents per bag?
That's a stupid idea.
Would you like a bag?
Yes.
5 cents a bag.
5 cents? 5 cents? Do I still have the option of getting punched?
Honestly, I don't know how everyone else missed it.
Why don't you just get a reusable bag?
All right, we got a great third hour coming up here. Evan McMorris-Santoro is going to be here as a friend of Bill for the entire hour, and then we'll be joined by another good friend, Congresswoman Jen Schakowsky from Illinois. She's been a point person in the House in support of the Iran nuclear deal, going mano a mano with Chuck Schumer, the big opponent in the Senate. Hour number 3 coming up. Stay with us.
This is the Bill Press Show.
The hardest moments for me is when I'm
laying awake in the middle of the night and I'm thinking about all the times I made a pitcher of Kool-Aid with the water, or I boiled a pot of corn or potatoes with the water. Those thoughts just stick with me in the middle of the night. And I feel horrible as a mom that I didn't know that something was wrong, but how could I have known? There's no way I would have known.
The spill at Dan River happened when a drainage pipe that ran underneath an ash basin and dam collapsed, sucking out 6 decades of waste and spewing gunk directly into the river.
My husband and I just kind of looked at each other like, should we be concerned? We live right next to an ash pond, and this was coal ash spilling into the Dan River, and we learned at that point all of the toxins that were included in coal ash.
A situation like Dan River, where there was a catastrophic disaster, gets people's attention, but the fact is that these coal ash pits have been leaking and poisoning people's groundwater and the state's surface waters for decades. Coal ash is the residue left behind after coal is burned in a coal-fired power plant. A large coal-fired power plant can burn 10 million tons of coal a year. When the organic matter in the coal is burned away, what's left behind are these trace minerals, things like arsenic, lead, mercury, selenium, and chromium. And these are highly concentrated. The coal ash can have concentrations of these contaminants that are 10 to 100 times greater than the level in the coals themselves.
Coal ash pond number 1 is right behind my house, literally pretty much in my backyard. We were approached by a neighbor who was wanting to have their well tested, and we decided that maybe we should have ours tested as well. They found hexavalent chromium at 4.5 parts per billion.
So in talking to the residents, we have discovered anecdotal evidence of an extraordinary number of cancers for this fairly small community.
Some of us in the community got together. We started kind of talking about all the cancer that we've seen in some of our family friends in this community. I think we had somewhere in the neighborhood of around 70 names. So we had some help from our river keepers putting a map together, and it was a little shocking to see it. You know, I still have a hard time looking at it.
Technically, EPA has not regulated coal ash as a hazardous waste, but it is undeniable that coal ash contains many, many hazardous substances that are hazardous, in fact, to people and the environment. And the only reason they have not been regulated as such is because of intense lobbying efforts by the coal industry and its allies.
A lot of these chemicals are simple elements, but when you find them at the levels that they exist in around coal ash ponds, then you're starting to talk about cancer, brain tumors, you're talking about birth defects, developmental problems, neurotoxicity.
We began to look at legal options, cases that we could bring in court to protect communities and their citizens from these toxic leaking time bombs. In 2002, North Carolina enacted a public financing mechanism for judicial elections. This kept private money out of judicial elections.
The repeal of the public financing program in judicial elections in North Carolina creates a dangerous precedent for all, and it gives corporate polluters and other special interests the opportunity to elect the judges that they want. And this is important for us all. everyone should care about this. Because when you think about the fact that the state and the federal government have basically abdicated their responsibility to regulate these issues, the state courts are the last stopgap.
I think this is no longer a problem that's going to go under the radar. It has been exposed, and I am confident that we will ultimately, with the facts, win out and ensure that we have protected waterways.
And so this is something that we all should care about. If we're worried about the water we drink and the air we breathe, we have to be concerned about money in judicial elections.
At Earth Justice, we defend the environment in the courtroom. Join our fight. When you take a seat, you take a stand. Earth Justice, because the Earth needs a good lawyer.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds. At highway speeds, that's enough time to travel the length of a football field. Stop the texts, stop the wrecks.
Broadcasting around the nation, on your radio, on your TV, and online. This is the Bill Press Show.
All right, go figure. Bernie Sanders is ahead in New Hampshire, and Donald Trump is ahead in Iowa. What does that say about politics in 2016 and the mood of the electorate? Hello, everybody. Here we go. The Bill Press Show, Wednesday, August 12th. So good to see you today. Thanks for being part of the program. We got lots and lots to talk about and good people to help us do it here in hour number 3 of the Bill Press Show. You join us anytime you want. Just pick up the phone, give us a call at 866-55-PRESS, and you will find Evan McMorris-Santoro, a friend of Bill, often sitting in this chair, but today he's across the desk because he's here as a friend of Bill for the entire hour. Hello, Evan. Good to see you.
Hi. Always better be on this side of the table. It's much more comfortable to be here.
Yeah, you do a good job.
Let
here.
you drive
People
the
like
ship,
you.
man.
Yeah, drive it into the iceberg often enough. And you know the team here well because you work with Peter Ogburn and Elisa Murphy.
Hey, good morning.
With Jamie Benson on the phones, 866-55-PRESS, Monty Kanzler on the camera as our videographer this morning. And the last time Evan and I, we were hanging out together at, I forget the name of the place up in
Murphy's.
Murphy's
in Manchester, New Hampshire.
Murphy's Tap Room in Manchester, New Hampshire with Sabrina Siddiqui. What I didn't realize...
Did you get a nice Pinot Grigio there? Or?
No, man. We said we're drinking beer. To set the scene, we're in Manchester, New Hampshire.
I did not see a wine glass in the entire establishment.
Well, if you would have been plastic. Remember, they were plastic. They were plastic pint glasses.
Yeah. I was not going to risk getting thrown out of the bar by ordering a glass of wine. Not in that crowd. But what I didn't realize is, you go out with Evan McMorris-Santoro, and you're just relaxing, having a burger and a beer, and he's tweeting photos.
I did not tweet a photo. I sent a picture.
He sent a picture to me because he knew you had an early morning hit, and so he sent me an email.
So I come on the air the next day, and everybody's Jimmy Williams and Peter. They said, "Yeah, we saw the pictures," and I'm thinking, "What?
No way! I didn't tweet anything. I did not tweet anything." But to set the stage, so we're in Manchester, New Hampshire, a land of beautiful local brew pubs and wonderful local restaurants. And after the GOP forum that we all attended, we decided to go to Murphy's, the kind of college half-price beer night. It was a raucous time. It was a Monday night, and it was slammed to the walls.
Totally packed Monday night. In fact, when I got there, Sabrina and Evan weren't there yet. I couldn't find a place. I
kidding.
I figured we'd have to go somewhere else. It was jammed, and it was a young woman at the college who recommended it.
That's right.
Duh. Now we know.
Do you remember what kind of beer you had? Because Bill notoriously hates beer.
No, I do remember what kind of beer you had.
Yeah.
So the woman, we have a long back and forth discussion about what kind of beer.
The list, they had 500 beers.
Oh, wow.
You would have loved this place.
Yeah,
They have all the beers
I
in the
do
world
love
there at
beer.
this place. And so Bill had a harp because they talked about a lot about kind of beer. And I seem to enjoy it.
Yeah. What do you think?
No, I did.
It's a good beer.
Yeah. She was recommending
It was actually a really fun time. I was like, it's like one of those things. Like the nice part about being on the road and covering this stuff on the road is sometimes you get to hang out and like have a bunch of reporters showed up. Eventually, there's about 15 of us sitting around a table from all different outlets, eating beers,
that was the other thing. We
burgers.
started with, it was just me, and then Evan and Sabrina, and then that was a plan for three of us. The next thing I turned around, there's a couple more showing up. And then Evan would say, "Oh, hey, you want to?" Pretty soon, it looked like
that's fun though.
You're a big draw, Bill. I was like, we were drinking with Bill.
Yeah, that's fun.
Everybody shows up.
You're not on the road. You're not out on the road that often. That's a lot of fun.
No, exactly. So we did. We had a lot of fun. Again, Evan here for the entire hour, is a friend of Bill, and Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky from Illinois joining us a little bit later. She's leading the charge for the Iran nuclear deal in the House. Evan, but first,
This is the Full Court Press.
A lot of big stories here. Shade balls, Bill. What do you know about them? You know what a shade ball is?
I've never heard of a shade ball.
All right, I'm going to tell you what a shade ball is. This is a whole thing in California that they're using to help.
Yesterday, what was it with Clinton? We were talking about
shotgunning a beer. I had to explain to Bill what a shotgunning a beer was. Yeah.
I'm sure you know plenty of things like shotgunning a beer.
Shade balls. These are the next big step that's going to help fight the drought in California. Yesterday, L.A. Mayor Eric Garcetti dumped 20,000 shade balls into the L.A. reservoir. Now, how do shade balls work? They're about the size of a ping pong ball. They're black in color, and they reduce evaporation, protect against animals and dirt, and only cost about 36 cents per ball. You float these balls out onto the water, and it helps protect the water below the shade balls, right? So you don't have it evaporate as much. There's not as much loss because of animals and things like that. So they dumped a total of, like I said, 20,000 shade balls. LA is the first place to use this type of thing for water quality control. So it also staves off algae growth and prevents harmful chemical reactions between sunlight and chlorine.
And you get a pond full of ping pong balls.
Ping pong balls, yeah. Play a little
I
ping
don't want
pong.
to look out at a lake or a reservoir and see nothing but floating plastic.
But you want to see water in it, though.
Right. I mean,
this is a Jerry Brown kind of Governor Moonbeam solution.
Yeah.
This is very futuristic, I think. We're putting ping pong balls into water. Yeah.
I think it's interesting. I did this story
Bill's
earlier.
not sold on that.
I know, he's clearly not into that. No. I did this story earlier, and it bears repeating. If you have a Jets fan in your life, give them a big hug today, because yesterday their starting quarterback lost his job for 6 to 10 weeks because one of his teammates punched him in the jaw so hard that he broke the jaw of the starting quarterback, Geno Smith. Yeah, not a great story. The linebacker that punched him, IK Enemkapali, Geno Smith put a finger in his face. Linebacker punched him in the face. It was all over a fight over an airplane ticket that he wanted to be reimbursed.
These are not children, you know.
No, they should know better.
They're making multi-million-dollar salaries, and they're
the linebacker IK Enemkapali has been released by the Jets, so he is a man without a team.
So he lost his job. And the QB lost his job.
Yeah.
Well, at least their footballs were proper inflation, though.
That's true.
I mean,
that's true.
This is how you lose. You should lose a quarterback's job for something like this.
Yeah, exactly.
Cheating.
And this is a story I know our good friend Jamie Benson is not going to like this one, Jamie. I'm sorry to tell you, buddy. But there is a brewery up that is making beer, and there's a person on the line who doesn't like Tom Brady. They don't like Tom Brady at all. So all these people are getting these cans of this beer, and on the bottom, a little print runs there that says, Tom Brady sucks. S-U-X. The name of the brewery is Sun King Beer. And again, it's just like in the little, you know how they have little like expiration dates and a lot of things. Tom Brady sucks. SUX. It's an Indianapolis brewery. So the Colts there clearly have a problem with the Patriots.
Everybody should. Tom Brady is a cheater.
There you go.
I mean, the man cheated at football.
The assembly line, anybody could have any little personal.
They've identified the man who's doing it. The man goes by the name of Biscuit, and he works at the brewery. I'm not making that up. That's true.
And Biscuit's not going to lose his job? No.
No.
Okay.
No,
I mean, you're not going to lose your job in Indianapolis saying Tom Brady sucks. You're going to get a raise. Biscuit's going to be living. They're calling Biscuits in gravy from now on. They're going to have to have gravy on there.
All right. Evan, just off a plane from the West Coast where you were out there with Bernie Sanders in Seattle, in Portland, in Oakland, where he got to. You mentioned me in Manchester. Keep your eyes open. Monday, there could be a big endorsement. National Nurses Union, that's a big deal.
Big deal. I mean, it's his first national union endorsement. It's the largest union of nurses in the country. And it is, it's 90% women. It's 90%.
Exactly.
It's 90% working women, and they actually addressed that at the event in Oakland at their headquarters. And their headquarters, by the way, you go to this union headquarters downtown Oakland, and they had this news very tightly embargoed, which is what they tell us, where we can't report it until a certain time. And I show up to their headquarters, and it just says Nurses Heart Bernie. And in a huge, maybe 40-foot banner outside that building.
Oh, no.
Everything is just plastered with Bernie. They love Bernie Sanders. And they get asked in a press Q&A, Hillary Clinton is obviously running very hard for the support of working women. She's talking a lot this campaign about being an advocate for working women and working for women and pushing for women's issues and women in the workplace especially. And I interviewed a number of the nurses there, and they said essentially that they just feel like Hillary Clinton is too close to Wall Street and corporate power. And they said, the executive director of the union said, we'd love to break the glass ceiling, but we want to break the stranglehold of Wall Street on politics more. And so that's sort of where Bernie Sanders got the endorsement from.
The only other, most of the unions have been holding off because Rich Trumka of the AFL-CIO has said, let's wait until after the primary, at least later. But the only other union endorsement, there's just one. The AFT endorsed Hillary Clinton, and now the National Nurses endorsing Bernie Sanders.
Which it should be said, AFT has many, many nurses as well. It's part of its union.
That's right.
They have more than 100,000 nurses. So, the two biggest nurses unions have weighed in. One has gone for Hillary Clinton, one has gone for Bernie Sanders. But I thought that, they both are long-term personal connections. Bernie Sanders has been close to this union for a long time, the NNU, and Hillary's been very close to AFT's Randy Weingarten for a long time. So there's some of that goes with this. But, this is a risk for these unions. I mean, the National Nurses Union is taking, and they're going to go out there and they're going to campaign for Bernie Sanders in Iowa and in New Hampshire, and they have thousands of members there. I mean, this is a big deal. And you could see, because Bernie Sanders is a guy who has faced he's had these huge crowds on the campaign trail, which have been great, but also he's been repeatedly faced by these protesters, and he does not like these protesters very much. I mean, he's listened to them, he's talked to them, he's tried to embrace their cause, and I think done a fairly good job of it. But you can see that there's been some frustration from his campaign about the constant interruptions. So sometimes you see him on the campaign trail, he's not maybe in the best spirits. At this nurses union event, the man was all smiles. I mean, it was amazing. He was just he was walking about 4 feet above the ground.
Wow!
So excited at this place, and the people there were excited to see him, and just the whole vibe of the event was just incredibly positive. And he was just in a great mood.
Let's talk about the Black Lives Matter. You were in Seattle. Two events there. The big event, open event, which went off. I saw your report on it. Right, 16,000 people, whatever. But the first event, which was organized not by his campaign, but it was the Social Security event. He was invited to speak. Never spoke. Interrupted by Black Lives Matter. How did they handle that, and how did they respond? And do you think it was a fair tactic?
So the way the campaign responded to it. So as you say, Bernie Sanders shows up. These protesters appear. They say we want to have 4 minutes and something of silence.
4.5 minutes.
4.5 minutes of silence. They do that. Then they continue to hold the mic after that. The organizers cancel the event, and Bernie Sanders leaves. at that, I mean, he left, but he stood there on stage this whole time. We've seen this evolve, okay? When the protesters first came after Sanders at Netroots, Sanders was reacted very defensively. You know, she talked about his own sort of long history with civil rights movement, stuff like that. That did not go over very well at all. And since that time, the campaign, and I wrote about this in a story that went up last week after I went around with Bernie Sanders in New Hampshire. Since that time, the campaign really was jarred by this experience at Netroots. And Bernie Sanders, who is a long-term civil rights advocate and a long-term sort of progressive advocate, went out, met with people from this movement, and has basically infused his whole campaign message with their message. I mean, now he's saying directly, I am the candidate of this movement. I'm the person who wants to back up this movement. And we saw
hired one of them.
That's right. We saw in Seattle that he added a new national press secretary named Simone Sanders.
She's great, by the way.
And she's introducing him now, and she is she's an entree in that movement, but also she's an advisor to him, and she was very direct in questions with me. I interviewed her, and she was very direct about advice that she gave Senator Sanders about how to change the way he talks to these people, not to change positions necessarily, but to just to sort of talk differently about his own experience, because he talks a lot about the past, and these Black Lives Matter protesters believe that they are in a current crisis, that they're not very interested in what you did with Martin Luther King in the 60s. They want to know what you're going to do about stopping police
Brown
shootings and Sandra Bland and all of these things that are happening today. And it's taken Sanders a little bit of time to figure that out, but now it is sort of fully throughout his whole message. I think more than most other candidates. I mean, Martin O'Malley's put out a very strong criminal justice package that the protesters seem to like. They went and met with Hillary Clinton yesterday in New Hampshire, and there was the statement afterwards was somewhat negative about what she had said there. So Sanders is making a real effort to embrace this movement.
Has he kind of put that behind him, do you think?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I feel like...
Let me put it this way. What would be this... I debated this last night with a member of the Black Lives Movement on Kris Hayes on MSNBC.
Okay.
What would be the point of disrupting any more Bernie Sanders rallies?
Well, it gets a lot of press for Black Lives Matter movement.
I guess that's the only point.
I mean, but I also think, look, you know, this is they have chosen him as sort of their primary focus here. It's not exactly clear why in some ways, but in other ways, he is the one that he was very confrontational at first with them, and now he has become more interested in listening to what they had to say. And I think things are changing, and we're seeing an internal debate inside. You know, if you look at Twitter, look at social media, where a lot of the organization of this movement happens, there is some debate now. About whether or not he should remain the target. And that's why we've seen Hillary Clinton become protested yesterday.
But that's also, be honest, one of the reasons they're going after Bernie Sanders is he's accessible. They couldn't get into the Hillary event yesterday because the Secret Service wouldn't allow them into the room.
Well,
right?
I will say they did announce it in the press like 2 hours earlier that they were going to disrupt a rally that was coming up. That's not exactly the best way to do it.
Good point.
I don't think any candidate is going to be like, oh, yeah, let me leave the doors open for these protesters. They're going to mess up my press event.
866-55-PRESS, you know the toll-free number. Join us here with Evan McMorris-Santoro, just back off the road with Bernie Sanders, who is now 7 points ahead of Hillary Clinton in New Hampshire. What does that mean? Evan will tell us when we come back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
This is my computer.
This is your computer. Let's go on the internet.
Let's go. Click it.
Yes.
Okay.
I cursor in between the R and the E. If I say dot, I want you to just push the period.
She's gonna love me all over again.
That's it. Jamaica, here you go.
Here we go.
Good job.
Thank you. Thank you. And I did it by myself. Feel smarter.
So, I'm kind of new here, but I've noticed a trend. My human does this funny thing where she goes around and gets all my toys, and then she hides them in that basket by the door. You know, but it's always the same basket, and it's always in the same place. And then she acts so surprised when I find them, but, you know, she's putting them in the same basket. Again. It's like, hello? That's where you put it last time. You were the worst at hide and go seek.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
All right. I know this isn't any fun to talk about, but we should. Okay. So who's going to do what?
I'll pack the dead batteries.
Great.
I'll only put what I don't need into a duffel bag.
Perfect. That's totally unhelpful.
No problem.
Meanwhile, I will try to comfort everyone by speaking in a calm voice.
And I'll try to get the generator going without any gas.
Oh, let's not forget the cell phones, which probably won't work.
Right.
And who is going to handle supplies?
I can forget to do a list for us.
Thanks, pal.
Well, I think we couldn't be any less prepared. I'm proud of you guys.
Talk to your kids about who to call, where to meet, what to pack. Visit ready.gov/kids for tips and information.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. You know, I followed your character since the first episode. I'm a big fan, big fan.
Thank you.
And listen, your storyline, it makes for incredible TV drama. Thing is, your drug use is very adult content. Too adult for the kids. So I'm gonna have to block you.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, have a good one.
You're a nice lady.
This is the Bill Press Show.
27 minutes after the hour, Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky switching gears at the half hour. Here with Evan McMorris-Santoro. You got to tell us, you've been at all these Bernie events. I was just asking Evan off the air. He gives a 1 hour speech. He gives the same, serious 1 hour speech, right?
Yeah, I mean, so I've been telling everybody, this is the most amazing thing about Bernie Sanders is that you have people who wait online for hours and hours and hours to get in to hear an hour-long speech that is nothing but vegetables. I mean, it is the long, hour-long, wonky speech about details of how to... Right, he tells one joke in the whole speech, and the one joke is the Republican Party likes to talk about family values. I have a different opinion of families than them, and he does it in has a little move that he does. Mm-hmm. I can't really even do it on radio that well, and that is it. That is the extent of a laugh line that you get.
I was waiting for the laugh line.
Right? That's what I'm saying. He's like they talk about families. I have a different opinion about families than them, and they're people and they laugh. Values. Right.
Oh my God,
that's it.
Great.
That's it.
There's not one single joke in the thing. He gets up there. He says, wow, what a big crowd.
Yeah.
And he just goes on to this. It's wild. And people love it.
I'm going to have to write him some joke material.
You should totally.
Yeah.
He did tell a good joke about Donald Trump, which we can tell him when we get back. I can tell you he had a really good Donald Trump joke. I'll tell you that.
Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky joining us next.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
Grunt work. Love it, hate it, useful, not useful.
Necessary.
Our social entrepreneurs are people who have been on the front lines of social change. I've learned so much from talking with them. This is Cafe Impact, and I'm Jonathan Lewis.
I will say that I think is a challenge for anyone, especially the new workforce as they come in, is the ability to accept grunt work with grace.
The most boring, awful details are the most important elements of doing this work. From the way you save names in your Rolodex to the way you bank and you deposit checks. The truth is, this work isn't glamorous, it's rewarding. You don't go into this for the glamour, you go into it for the impact. And so it takes that determination to do the scut work to actually get anywhere.
It can be really challenging in a first job for someone who's coming out of finishing school to have the enthusiasm that they do to make the type of social impact that they've dreamed of. And now they're here in this first job and all of a sudden they're shouldered with all this grunt work. And they don't understand and they don't get it and they're resentful.
Talk more about the power of answering phones.
Sure, I did that myself, took out the trash, cleaned offices when I had to, and it's all good. There's power in being a good team player and in being somebody who sometimes has to support other people's leadership before you get to have your own moment in the sun.
Is it hard to wait?
It is absolutely hard to wait, especially if you're an alpha female like I am.
I think grunt work can help a new employee build trust internally and teach them the nuances of how an organization is run so that they can have a real good sense of what HR is doing, what finance is doing, what all the other departments are, and that actually makes them a better employee in the long run.
So in my role on a daily basis, I literally can be looking at a new venture in software. We could be looking at a microfinance deal. I could be making coffee, taking out the trash, and riding a tractor on any given day.
Have you found people who thought it was demeaning that they were given this job, work in the front office and make the coffee when they graduated with all A's from this great university?
Yeah, people like that just don't last very long in our world. If your approach to life is that, you're so smart and you're such a fabulous entrepreneur that you can't understand why people aren't giving you opportunities, it's really hard to advance.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
What the frack?
What the frack?
What the frack?
President Obama, are you fracking kidding me?
Reopen the EPA studies.
In Texas, Wyoming, and Pennsylvania.
Fracking pollutes our oceans.
Fracking poisons our water.
Fracking makes climate change worse.
Fracking relies on toxic chemicals that cause cancer.
Ban fracking now.
Ban fracking now.
Go on. Ban it.
Ban fracking now. Please.
The most valuable morning radio show, according to The Nation magazine. This is The Bill Press Show.
Here we go now at 33 minutes after the hour on a Wednesday, August 12. It is The Bill Press Show. Evan McMorris-Santoro. Sorry, Evan.
That's all right.
Butcher your name.
It's a lot of names.
Here in studio with us as a friend of Bill. And this is the month of August, and Congress is officially in recess. But don't you think that our members of Congress are just sitting back, at the beach? They're on the job. And friend Congresswoman Schakowsky joins us on our news this morning, representing Chicago's 9th, Payment badge this morning. Congressional.
To your that cool of gin there.
Yeah. Hello, Congresswoman. How are you?
I'm just glad to be with you.
How's Chicago? Everything good?
Everything, well, we have interesting politics always in Chicago and certainly in Illinois. So, but yeah, everything's fine right now.
And Tammy Duckworth looks like she's setting the world on fire out there, huh?
She's what?
She's setting the world on fire. I mean, she's doing...
Yeah, she's doing a great job. She's doing a great job. I'm a big supporter.
Realize that about the Iran nuclear deal, because that's what's on the line. President Obama not meeting, he said, with any members of Congress during his vacation, but certainly you and others are out there still working this deal. How does it look, and why are you supporting it?
Well, first of all, let me just say I feel very confident that we are going to have a sufficient number of votes in the House to make sure that we sustain any veto when the Republicans are almost certainly going to vote not to approve the deal, a motion of disapproval. This is not a hard call for me, Bill. I think the question that really has to be posed to the opponent is why not try diplomacy? Why not have a deal that the major scientists in our country, nuclear scientists, think is a really good deal? Why not support diplomacy that the rest of the world entirely is supporting? Why not when about 60 former security officers in Israel say that this is worth doing? Especially since no options are taken off the table. We all agree, everyone agrees, that Iran should not have a nuclear weapon. So the question is, how do we achieve that? And, of course, if we can achieve that without the use of military force or just, do nothing and hope for a better deal, which I think is, fantasy thinking, I'm for it.
Well, I thought it was significant. Yes, it was significant yesterday that Gary Seymour, who is known as one of the leaders in this movement and a very person who's been most critical of Iran and warning us about the dangers of their getting a nuclear weapon. In fact, he was president of a group called United Against Nuclear Iran.
Exactly.
He resigned that position yesterday because he looked at this deal and said, this is a good deal, and he could not go along with his organization, which has come out against the deal. And for him to break with that organization and say, these guys, these hardliners are wrong, that's a big deal, big news.
Well, and it's based on the fact that Gary looked very closely at the deal itself and said, I think President Obama's strategy succeeded. And so, yes, he had to quit the organization that actually had been created in order to defeat this deal. And that's what I would suggest people do. Take a look. And I watched the whole speech last night online that the president gave at American University. It is so incredibly compelling, and I think it answers all the questions that people could have. So I feel like the people that are opposed to the deal were opposed to it before it ever was announced.
Yeah. It's worth pointing out, by the way, Evan, I know you got a question, but that the person then who stepped in to succeed Gary Seymour as president of this group is former Senator Joe Lieberman, who, not surprised, who promised he was not going to be a lobbyist after he left Congress, but I guess people changed their mind at any rate. Evan?
Yeah. Congresswoman, hi, it's Evan McMorris-Santoro from BuzzFeed. You speak about the opponents of the Iran deal. Obama has spoken about the opponents of the Iran deal, strongly saying, that this is a lot of politics behind this. They haven't looked at the deal very closely. What are Democrats supposed to do with these Democrats who are turning on this deal? I mean, someone like Chuck Schumer in the Senate, he's come out against the deal. He's still sort of on the glide path to become the leader of the Democrats in the Senate when Harry Reid leaves. Should these Democrats that are standing in the way of this deal or trying to stop this deal, should they face any sort of punishment from inside their party?
Well, first of all, let me say that as someone who has been whipping on this, that is trying to make sure that we line up at least 146 votes to sustain a veto, we're concentrating on the people that we want to get to yes. And we never included people like Chuck Schumer, and there were some others in New York, Steve Israel and Elliot Engel. We never counted those. And I'm sure there's politics involved. I'm sure there's concern for that there's some legitimate concerns that they raised. But we're trying to get to yes, to make sure that this deal goes through, feeling confident that when it does, that at the end of the day, all the critics, just as they were critical of the interim agreement, will see that this was a smart thing to do. So I don't know what they're going to do in the Senate. I think it's unfortunate that that Chuck Schumer is siding with such a tiny minority right now. Definitely a minority of one. Well, there's likely to be more, but and I still think that in the Senate and in the House that we're going to say that the deal should go through.
Let's talk numbers. 146, I think you just said. That's how many votes you need in the House. Is that correct?
That's right.
And in the Senate, do you know? I'd have to do the math.
34, I think.
30. That's right. That's the number I've heard.
Uh-huh.
34. So we need 30. And so far, there's not one Republican that has come out in support of the deal. Is that correct?
That's right. Although
Which kind of tells you where their opposition is coming from. But
yes, although we have talked to a few. I'm not going to say that we can't get any. We're also looking at some possible supporters in the House, and Jeff Flake possibly would decide to go with it in the Senate.
Senator Flake did say yesterday he was pretty convinced that President Obama would be able to override a veto.
Uh-huh.
I mean, would sustain it.
Right.
Would be able to sustain the veto. Yeah.
Right. I have to tell you, I was doing a little research for a column yesterday, and looking at because let's face it, as far as I'm concerned, the leader of the opposition to this deal is Prime Minister Netanyahu, who gave a joint address to Congress, but. He even as far back as 1995, he wrote a book where he said that Iran was a year away. I think at the time he said 3 to 5 years away. And a couple years later, he said they were like 1 year away. I mean, we've heard these warnings about how close Iran is to having a nuclear weapon now for like 20 years, and it hasn't proven to be true. What do you say to people who say this is a bad deal for Israel?
Again, watching the president at the end of his speech really dealt with the situation in Israel. And he said, yes, Israel lives in a very dangerous neighborhood close to Iran, a very bad actor in that region that has clearly said, death to Israel. And there are legitimate concerns. But he believes, and I believe, as a great supporter of Israel, as a Jew, that this will be make Israel safer, the region safer, and the world safer. And we'll do it without being forced. When we say Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, there are only so many options to make sure. And in fact, the 29 scientists that wrote this piece, actually, let me just read you one sentence. Before the interim agreement was negotiated in Lausanne, at that time, Iran had accumulated enough 20% enriched uranium that the required additional enrichment time for weapons use was only a few weeks. So we know that the sanctions regime, as tough as it was on the Iranian economy, did not stop them from moving toward a bomb. And there's no reason to think that if the United States walked away, that they wouldn't continue to do that, because the whole inspections regime, the whole sanctions regime would fall apart. And so I think in terms of Israel, that Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, with all due respect, is wrong about that. And I want to say one other thing about Bibi Netanyahu. He came here as a private citizen in 2002 and testified before the Congress that if we were only to have the courage to go to war on Iraq, that the whole region, including Iran, would be much safer, would be a much more calm and organized place, and would be better for Israel. He was wrong then, and I believe he's wrong now.
Yeah, thank you for that, Bibi Netanyahu. Right. Congresswoman, you're on the job, and I think the president feels more confident on the outcome thanks to your good work. I certainly do. And thank you for bringing us up to date this morning.
My pleasure, anytime, even on break.
I have to tell you, we have Secretary Ernest Moniz with us tomorrow. He's been a great leader, I think, and spokesperson for this issue.
Yeah, he knows a few things about the nuclear weapons issue.
Does he ever?
Yeah.
And hair care.
And hair care. Right.
I think he looks like Ben Franklin, you know?
It does, like a founding father. I agree with you, Congresswoman. I'm glad you said that. I've been saying that for a long time.
Okay.
All right, Congresswoman, talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye-bye, Bill.
So right. And we'll be back and continue with them. You know, he is a founding father.
He looks like. It's awesome.
We'll be right back.
This is the Bill Press Show.
Tune into Free Speech TV for Democracy Now!, a national, independent, award-winning news program bringing you people and perspectives rarely seen on corporate media.
I'm the retired bishop with the Episcopal Church as the bishop for all chaplains in federal service. I read that there was a group of people that represented a sense of injustice that I had. We'd lost Zuccotti. I mean, there was a kind of a hope that maybe Trinity Church would be gracious and give refuge. We picked this day where we would gather and demonstrate that Trinity was closing its ears to what was happening. We marched around the block, and I realized that, my goodness, they're carrying a ladder. And I thought, well, this is the moment. You could feel a spiritual presence. You could feel a certain something. And then the cops came in. It got brutal.
Yeah, I'm with you right here. Robin, I'm here.
The church needed, in this moment in history, to stand alongside of these protesters. The truth of Christ is found in the pews, is found in the institutional church, but it is also found on the streets. It's found in the honesty and the integrity, the insistence of people that you find in Occupy Wall Street.
Tune in to Gay USA with hosts Ann Northrup and Andy Hum for in-depth coverage of lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news. Watch Gay USA every week, only on Free Speech TV.
You wouldn't let money just blow out of your house. So when your AC or heater is on, make sure the doors, windows, and fireplace flue are shut tight. If you're headed out, turn down the AC or lower the heat by 10 degrees. And always keep your water heater set at 120. A little bit of common sense goes a long way. Get more great tips at energysaver.gov.
Tucker Carlson, President, Treasurer, and Sergeant-at-Arms of the Bill Press Fan Club. Wait a second, I know you're thinking. You and Bill Press have nothing in common politically. In fact, isn't he kind of insane? All true, but I love him like a brother anyway, and that's what a great guy he is. Congratulations, Bill. You're the best.
All right, Tucker Carlson weighing in. Even Fox News is celebrating, and Daily Caller celebrating our 10th anniversary, and we're all part of it. Evan McMorris-Santoro, friend of Bill, here for the hour. Hello, Evan.
Yeah, congratulations.
So, Bernie Sanders, 34 in New Hampshire, Hillary Clinton, 44 rather, and Hillary Clinton, 37. 7 points ahead. What does this mean? So is there a ground operation to follow the big crowds?
Well, this is the big question. The big question is, so he can go to all these states, Minneapolis and Madison, Wisconsin, and Portland, Seattle, L.A., and get thousands of crowds. But the thing is, you have to convert those crowds into votes in Iowa and New Hampshire. And I actually asked him about this in Oakland at a press conference. I said, how are you going to do this? And he doesn't really have such a solid answer yet. His answer is, it's early days and we're building an operation and we're trying to build a field operation. But I will say, they had a fairly sophisticated field operation in Portland. You saw there are volunteers everywhere grabbing people's emails, grabbing people's information. They have this text message thing. You go to the event and you text a number and then you join their system and, they get all your information and they're trying to turn that into grassroots donations and volunteers.
So they are organized in the sense that
they are.
Right? Yeah.
But someone like Hillary Clinton is very far down the road in terms of field operation. Now, look, it's not really fair for us to say that, some polls count and some polls don't count. If the guy's polling 7 points ahead of Hillary Clinton in an early state, even though it's an early poll and everything has to be taken with a grain of salt, you have to give some credit to the campaign he's running to actually show him ahead of her in an early primary state. That's very legitimate. That's the only number that's the number that we use to talk about the Trump surge all the time are these poll numbers. Yeah. So the fact is, it's a good place for him to be in. The question is, against what we've seen in the past with these sort of populist candidates that have built up, Howard Dean and the like, that even a big digital footprint and a big sort of grassroots movement, it can be sometimes very difficult to turn those into actual votes. There comes a time where these people who are all gathered together sort of under the same tent and feeling the love for Bernie, feeling the love for themselves, have to break out of that and go and knock on doors and try to actually get Democrats that may not be as into a Democratic socialist as they are to go out there and work. And that's sometimes been more difficult that we've seen for candidates like this. And it's an open question as to what will happen. But I will tell you the Sanders campaign is actually obviously very active in trying to collect that data, collect those names, and use it. And he has some very smart people at the top of his campaign. So It's interesting to see. But as he himself said at this press conference in Oakland, they have a long way to go to get an actual viable field operation on the ground in Iowa and in New Hampshire.
Do they have, that maybe answer my question. I was going to say, do they have headquarters in counties in Iowa? Not 99
I believe he said they have something around 25 staff people. Which may be spread across both states. Forgive me, it could just be Iowa. I don't know, but he has a couple dozen staff on the ground. And look, this is happening. They all have these staff people in small operations. It just is a matter of how fast you can build this up and how robust you can make it. He talks about the fact that he's going to be outspent. A lot of this is going to have to be volunteer. He can't buy a lot of this stuff because he is going to be outspent. He's not going to have the money. People like Hillary Clinton are going, and even Martin O'Malley has a super PAC, and you're going to have this big money pouring in, and that's the money that goes into paying for TV commercials that Bernie Sanders won't be able to compete with, paying for field operations that Bernie Sanders probably won't be able to compete with on a paid level. But if you can convert, if you can get 4,000 people to drive out from the West Coast that went and saw him this weekend, to drive out to Iowa in the month ahead of the election, you're going to have a real, that's a real operation. But the question is, will that happen? And we've seen in the past that it hasn't happened for people like Howard Dean. We don't know if it'll happen for people like Bernie Sanders, although it's clear that they are actively trying to make sure it does happen. They're aware of that problem and working on it.
And when it happens, before it happens, Evan McMorris-Santoro will be there on the scene, and I can't wait to go on the road with you again and find another beer joint somewhere.
Find some more dive bars, man.
Yeah, and hang out. Okay. Thanks, Evan. Thanks for coming in.
Anytime.
My turn. Wrap it up with a parting shot coming up next.
This is the Bill Press Show.
It is possible to read the history of this country as one long struggle to extend the liberties established in our Constitution to everyone in America. In other words, who, according to our laws and culture, gets to be considered a person? The law creates legal personhood, and movements create law and change culture. So, how have the courts passed laws to shape our culture? That history goes way back before Citizens United. 1819, Dartmouth College versus Woodward, Supreme Court case, turned a corporate charter from a government-granted charter to a contract. This ruling gave corporations standing within the Constitution. 1886, Santa Clara County versus Southern Pacific Railroad. Though the court did not rule on corporate personhood, the decision was subsequently cited as a precedent to hold that a private corporation is entitled to the same 14th Amendment rights of due process and equal protection as human beings. This makes it impossible for us to make laws that treat local businesses any differently than giant multinational corporations, even if their business practices are deemed to be harmful to workers, the environment and communities, or if they have a history of violating the law. Hale versus Henkel, 1906. The court granted corporations the Fourth Amendment search and seizure protection. Dodge versus Ford Motor Company, 1919. The Michigan Supreme Court says the business corporation is organized and carried on primarily for the profit of the stockholders. Stockholder primacy is established. The purpose of the corporation, according to the court, is no longer to serve the public good, as it had been. It is now to maximize profit for shareholders above all else. Pennsylvania Coal Company versus Mahon, 1922. Corporations get the Fifth Amendment takings clause, meaning if you pass a regulation that impacts a corporation's ability to make a profit, that is deemed a taking, and they can sue for the right to future profits lost. This creates a chilling effect, and local and state governments become much more hesitant to pass laws in the public interest for fear that corporations can claim loss of potential profits that cities and states will be on the hook to pay. Buckley versus Vallejo, 1976. The Supreme Court rules that spending money to influence elections is protected under the First Amendment, in effect saying that money is speech. Citizens United versus Federal Election Commission, 2010.
Today, the Supreme Court of Chief Justice John Roberts declared that because of the alchemy of its 19th century predecessors in deciding that corporations had all the rights of people, any restrictions on how these corporate beings spend their money on political advertising are unconstitutional.
The court's ruling threatens to undermine the integrity of elected institutions across the nation. It's a rejection of the common sense of the American people.
The Parting Shot with Bill Press. This is the Bill Press Show.
Well, there's an important movement out there with a very important message. It's called Black Lives Matter, and the leaders of that movement want to make sure that all candidates get the message. That's a good deal. But I think they're making a big mistake in targeting Bernie Sanders only. First of all, Bernie Sanders, more than any other candidate, agrees with them. He knows the importance of both social justice and economic justice. They're both equally important. He has fought for both of them for a long time. And second, why should Bernie Sanders be shut down when they give all these Republican candidates a pass? You know, I've done a lot of protesting in my life. In fact, I've organized quite a few protests. And the rule number one of protesting, I learned, is this. You protest people, rather, who don't agree with you. You don't waste your time protesting against people who already do agree with you. Just leave Bernie alone. That's my parting shot for today, folks. I'm Bill Press. Good to see you. And thank you for joining us on this Wednesday. We're done. Now the day is all yours. Make the most of it and come back and see us again tomorrow.
This
We'll be
is
looking
the
for you.
Bill Press Show.